Hello, everybody. It's the 29th of October, which is World Stroke Day. And we decided jointly with the World Stroke Organization and also the World Federation of Neurology to do a series of webinars this afternoon, especially on many facets of stroke rehabilitation. It's very nice that you're with us. Unfortunately, our online streaming on YouTube doesn't work at the moment, but it will be available soon on YouTube and also on the other networks, probably. Don't worry about that. It's my great pleasure to have you with us this afternoon, or wherever you are today. And it is my privilege to call for Professor Jari Pandyan, who is the new president of the World Stroke Organization, to say some words at the beginning.
Thank you, Dr. Hombach. I'm extremely sorry. I'm just returning back from a meeting with the health minister. It's a great privilege for me to address WFNR, this webinar during the World Stroke Day. And WFNR and WSO, we have a MOU, and in terms of education program, joint sessions, and we can explore further opportunities how we can work together. We recently had a wonderful teaching course, rehab teaching course for 2 days in Abu Dhabi just before the World Stroke Congress. About 150 people were trained, attended from all over the world. So it was a great program. So we could work together in some of these teaching programs and also creating awareness. This is a great event. We know the global burden of stroke, and it is rising with the new GBD data that is published. The burden is more in low and middle income countries when they don't have access to acute care, and there is more disability, and we know about the rehabilitation services all across the world. Still, there are several challenges, and that is where I think WFNR is doing great work through many regional organizations like Indian Federation Neuro Rehab, and I think we all have to work together. NCD stroke, and when I looked at the topics and that many will benefit from this for this program. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you very, very much for nice words. It's a pleasure for us to work together with the World Stroke Organization in any respect in bringing forward rehabilitation in the world of stroke. And as you mentioned, this was a very successful course in Abu Dhabi some days ago. And I may ask for Daphne Murejano, who is the president of the European Federation of Neurorehabilitation and was the main organizer of this course, to say some words at the beginning. Daphne?
Thank you very much, dear Volker. I'm very happy to be here again. Look, just a couple of days between our last joint project and this joint project with WSO. This is a fantastic signal of how nice we can work together. I'm very happy that Jari Pandyan, our WSO president, is here with us. And I was very happy to have this opening in Abu Dhabi. The two presidents have been opened the prestigious teaching course. So Volker and Jari did a great work and opened the teaching course. And we have to keep in mind that we work really hard to bring people from all over the world and to initiate this hopefully consistent series of teaching courses dedicated to neuro rehab. And most important, I want to mention the outstanding support in all knowledgeable directions given by our dear friend, Professor Sabahat Wasti. So Sabahat, your input there in Abu Dhabi and your presence and how you organize in Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi was outstanding. So I think we are on the very fruitful way of cooperating between us. European Federation, it's, I would say, an important fraction of the World Federation, and at the European level, we are mirroring completely the WFNR strategies, and I do believe that the current team is doing absolutely great, and again, in an even more organized way and more diligently, I would say, um, spreading the news all over the world. Just to mention that we have been able, due to the very professional assistant, I'm happy that Christian is here, Luke also today with us, the EFNR team, WFNR team, our joint WFNR, AFNR team was there supporting the streaming of the whole process of project in Abu Dhabi. And I think this is a great milestone in our cooperation. I do believe that now, with this tremendous development in the last 2 years, since Volker it's let's say coordinating the new direction of WFNR, it's visible that all these developments and changes are going up in all respects, and this is a great opportunity also to be today together, and I'm very much looking forward, and I'm confident for the new developments that will pave the way to a long-lasting cooperation between WFNR and WSO. Great to be together, and I wish a perfect program today. Should mention the efforts of Thomas further on, and this is great how much he did in all respect. And being here with Matilde, we have a gate open towards other horizons, and specifically to world health developments, and particularly European Academy of Neurology, which is close to us. Having said so, Volker, I think we have good auspices, and I do believe for a great development further on.
Okay, thank you very much, Dafin. I think Sabad Azimwasti can be with us only for a couple of minutes left. So, Sabad, eventually you want to say some words concerning the last very successful course, the neuro rehab in Abu Dhabi.
Thank you very much, Volker. Thank you very much, Dr. Pandian and Dafin, for all the support that you extended to us and allowed us to host the course in Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi. It was a wonderful success. The reviews that we are getting and the attendees who actually returned us their email and their sort of opinions, they are very, very happy with what they thought was an invaluable course and wonderful presentations by all the contributors. We in Cleveland will continue to support the efforts of development of stroke education, stroke rehabilitation education. We have already started working on something next level, and I will be writing to you and Dafin and Dr. Pandian how we want to now move to a kind of another activity related to community-based rehabilitation and all. So yes, it was a wonderful time. We enjoyed it. We also had a lot of good presence in World Stroke Congress. We had 4 sessions on rehabilitation this time, and I've already discussed, and Dafin has discussed, and Nirmal has discussed more presence of stroke rehabilitation related topics in the next WSC in Barcelona. So everything considered, it was a very successful 5 days of stroke associated activity, stroke rehabilitation associated activity in Abu Dhabi. Thank you very much for everybody for putting your trust in us, and we'll continue to support all the educational activities in stroke rehabilitation. Thank you.
Okay, Sabad, thank you very much, and also your team for helping with this course in Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi, which, as you mentioned, was a really tremendous success. Finally, we have some greetings from Professor Wolfgang Griswold, the president of the World Federation of Neurology. We have that recorded. Christian, eventually you can play this now.
Hello, my name is Dr. Wolfgang Griswold. I'm the president of the World Federation of Neurology. On the occasion of the World Brain Day or World Stroke Day, we have been invited to contribute, and we're very thankful that we can report on a very important recent meeting on the topic of palliative and end-of-life care in stroke. This meeting was held jointly with the World Stroke Organization. It was a joint meeting titled Palliative and End-of-Life Care in Stroke, and it tackled the question of late effects of stroke, life after stroke, and the meaning of palliative care that was presented by Professor Mead from the UK. The palliation and end-of-life care is reported by patients with stroke and their families, which was reported by Professor Saleb Ferguson from Australia. And we had a very interesting vision of long-term and stroke care in China by Professor Liping Liu from Beijing. I will present you a few slides that I think are relevant for this talk. And you can see here on the right side that we only recently met, Professor Paul Novick and myself, the WSO, and we just want to make you aware of the important sources as the WPD and also our World Federation Needs Registry that's freely available on the website. And of course, the constant reminder, consider the ICAP to implement your neurologic plans and structures. For this paper, we had 3 preceding stroke conferences, one on acute guidelines for acute stroke and palliative care. The second one was stroke and disability, and now we come to long-term care. Systematically, we had specific words selected like age, end of life, loneliness, palliative care, rehabilitation, and found about 250 references in regard to that. And you can see the most frequent one is on palliative care, the second frequent one is on stroke and end of life, and on disability. And this is an important summary of references. Now, to come to the problem, we have acute stroke. We usually calculate the 1 month mortality, and we know that some people die in the acute phase. There are guidelines from the American Heart Association. This seems to be quite a clear phase. What is more difficult is the trajectory of stroke. And usually the 5-year survival is considered, and we know that about half of patients who have a stroke die within 5 years. This sounds threatening, it is. And the topic of that was, what is the role of palliative care in that long trajectory? To explain this in more detail is the 1-year survival is important, the 5-year survival is important, but some people are in a good position to have rehabilitation and recover. Other people are not in that good position. They remain stable, they remain disabled, they are progressive, they are recurrent, and they need long-term care. And at any time, there may be deterioration, which ends in end-of-life care. And then the question of palliative care raises. In a different style of demonstration, maybe more easily and clearer, if we're lucky, we have successful rehabilitation. If for many people it's long-term care and prevention, and we also do not know what kind of secondary prevention is needed in those patients. We can then have either the favorable outcome that people improve or the bad outcome that deteriorate when it comes to end of life and the palliative care. And all this can happen within the 1/5 year, not to speak about the even longer tragic ones. So this kind of curve can be expected at any time. Now, to identify the aspects, we identified 3 bubbles. The first one is the cognitive bubble. That contains cognitive reserve, speech, aphasia, depression, apathy, motivation, communication. This is an important bubble for the person to communicate and to reach therapeutic goals. The second bubble is the neurologic deficit, the disability, motor, sensory, swallowing difficulties, pain, incontinence, contractures, sarcopenia, and contains aspects as isolation, loneliness, social aspects, stigma, family abandonment, financial issues. 3 bubbles are extremely helpful and they come out this large collection of words that I showed in the beginning. But we have to acknowledge that we have several factors we cannot influence. That's age, multimorbidity, constitution, mobility, culture, ethnic group, low income, and stigma. And of course, in addition to that, in particular the bubble 3, the social one, shared decision making is something that's not available readily everywhere. The autonomy of the patient, which can be the autonomy in regard to being able to take care of himself, or autonomous in regard to decision, is a very ambiguous term. The phases of the disease that cannot be easily compared with the usual phases of death and dying, the death wish, which in some countries of Europe and also in other parts of the world is legal, and also the spiritual wishes of the patient. Now, I took out of a paper a patient statement regarding loneliness. There is a stigma with regard to anything to do with loneliness and mental health. To the older generation, that stigma is still there, and you're supposed to seek it and get on with it. It sounds rather helpless in regard to loneliness. But these qualitative analyses and statements are sometimes very helpful to understand the aspect of the problem. We're also aware that after the acute phase and hospital discharges, many patients have problems which are indirectly related and directly related, like pain, sensory symptoms, sleep disturbance, incontinence, and of course, there's a scientific aspect that may be existential needs, hopelessness, and also the fear to be moved to a care home, which is a very important aspect. If we look at the duration of palliative care, where there are studies on that, most of them are, as we expect, rather short, around the time of dying. But as you can see here, there are also palliative care situations that take on quite some time. If we look at these phases, on the left side, you will see the typical phases of a brain tumor. There's a diagnosis, there's treatment, the patient, the tumor grows, the Karnofsky performance scale decreases, and finally, supportive care comes into palliative care. That's comparatively simple. In stroke, we often have a waxing and waning. So people have a stroke, they improve, they have a restroke, they all may decline, and there are complications. So this kind of simple classification on a linear way, as we want to have that, is not feasible in stroke. And there's another point that was also discussed in the meeting, the term of transition. Transition care has many meanings, and many of the transition models, for instance, in pediatrics, I would say it has a positive connotation. A young adult or an older child moves into adult neurology for treatment. That's positive. Transition in long-term and palliative care usually means that the long-term care or the interventional care goes into palliative care, and this is not something that people appreciate very much. It's something for patients to accept, for carers, for the healthcare professionals, and there's lots of reasoning background. One has to avoid being too euphemistic. On the other hand, it's also an aspect to give a negative prediction in the sense there's no seed which should be avoided. So finally, palliative care in stroke. I think from my perspective, there is an acute and a suppressive aspect. That is would be acute severe brain damage in stroke. It would be an incredibly large hemorrhage. It would be a fatal subarachnoid hemorrhage. It's something, a turning point where you know that the palliative care will be not. In the longer run, in the 5-year run, it's not easy because it's super acute. And in the long run, of course, it can be mentioned. There are examples here, and for the superacute palliative care, I'd like to mention motor neuron disease and glioma, where from the diagnosis you somehow know the further development. And in other diseases like degenerative diseases, some genetic conditions which have an irreversible and progressive palliative, you also know that healing the typical concept of medical help to reverse the disease is impossible when you have a palliative setting. So where we position stroke, I try to put on with lines here. And every meeting I attend usually has a carry away message. You hear a lot of things, you see many slides, but then something sticks out that impresses you. And our colleague from Canada made one very important statement I share with you. The statement was palliative care should never be an adjective. So a patient is never palliative. He may need palliative care, but he's not palliative. And avoiding this will make us aware of the great responsibility we have to provide palliative. With that I end, I have some acknowledgements, first of all, to the other speakers of the meeting, to the chair, to our societies who helped to sponsor us. And I want to make a special acknowledgement to the Frankenstein and Neurology seminars and to the Open House Foundation of helping to putting this together. With that I end. I want to thank you for your interest, and I also want to make you aware that the next World Congress of Neurology will be in 1 year in Seoul. If you should be interested in headache, on 23rd of November, there will be free 1-day course jointly with the International Headache Society on headache for Africa, but it's open for the world. So please join, have a look at it, and you will find access on the World Federation of Neurology website. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Wolfgang. We certainly come back to that, and hopefully we meet next year. And so, anyway, I think we should go on. I have a short presentation on new developments in stroke rehabilitation. Christian, you can play the video next. Hi, hello to this webinar on future perspective of stroke rehabilitation. Let me give you some introductory words concerning WFNR and our view on future elements and perspectives. The WFNR has 3 major goals: advancing first research, second clinical practice, and third education in the field of neurorehabilitation around the world. We do this through an extensive organization of more than 40 national societies, 5,000 individual members, and more than 55,000 professionals attached to our networks. When we look at the global situation, this is data from the World Health Organization, the key facts are really amazing. WHO estimates that 1 in 3 people today are estimated to be living with a condition which might eventually benefit from rehabilitation. And of course, rehabilitation is an essential part of the universal health coverage system. When we look closer, over 1 billion people are estimated at the moment in the world to live with some form of disability. You see, that is really a giant endeavor we are facing in the world of rehabilitation, also after stroke, TBI, and other conditions. When we look, however, at the available resources, the situation is completely different. This is just the number of patients per physician in different parts of the world. You see, the situation is not that good in Africa, 3,500 more patients per physician. Situation certainly is better in richer countries in Europe and the Americas. But nevertheless, we are faced with a situation with a paucity of resources on one side and a tremendous need on the other side. And we have to face the situation that today hundreds of millions of people in the world will really not have access to a decent form of rehabilitation. We have to think what we can do about that. I want to alert our young audience today on the WFNR mentorship program, which is running better and better by year, and you're cordially invited to join this mentorship program. If there is an interest in a mentorship situation, just contact our website on details. Where are we? Well, we have learned to conceive neurorehabilitation as a field of applied neuroscience, but this is not all. Neurorehabilitation goes very much beyond the pure scientific or approach centered on natural sciences. We certainly have to incorporate social sciences, and we also have to incorporate philosophical and political aspects in what we're doing. So what's the problem with the future? This famous phrasing is attached to Niels Bohr. I'm not entirely certain if it's true. That prognoses, of course, are difficult, especially when they refer to the future. I'm certain that the health scenery of medicine within the next decade will change dramatically. We will have better focalized medicines based on biomarkers. We will have more severe diseases will become treatable, genetic diseases and others. Digital communication and telemedicine will improve the availability of services and techniques, especially considering the fact that the vast majority of people in the world do not have access to these systems. So that is a very important aspect. And the question is, in all of these developments, how does neurorehabilitation blend in? Well, fortunately, year by year, we have an increasing number of very good, high-quality papers being published in the field of neurorehabilitation. But on the other side, the question, of course, is, did we so far in this field of neurorehabilitation have real game changers as penicillin, game changers as mRNA vaccines for COVID-19, for instance? Well, the question is that nobody will deny that evidence-based medicine is probably the best we have to date to put decisions or base decisions on some sort of knowledge. But necessarily, science cannot always be put into the framework of randomized controlled trials and meta-analyses. And in some sense, the impression is more and more that the concept of evidence-based medicine may eventually even preclude progress in the field. So we have to think about this epistemological problem. So did we have real game changers? Well, the use of botulinum toxin has certainly changed the world of spasticity, Baclofen and PAMS as well. Constraint-induced movement therapy has very much added to the repertoire of motor rehabilitation, and more multimodal drugs may become available, helping to increase the inherent properties of brain recovery. So high-tech, low-tech options. The question is, what is available, what is desired, what is useful? Let's have a short look at some high-tech options. People are always fascinated by high technology, although it's probably not the most important aspect of modern neurorehabilitation. We have to deal with several of these high-tech options. I go briefly into it. Let's have a look at these robots, intelligent mechanical training devices. They're available for almost 20 years and longer now. They have very nice properties as refined sensing of the patient's motor activity, high repetition rate. They can be used to see in severely affected patients, and they may be augmented and blended into environments with intelligent software providing important knowledge of result, put the entire therapy in a playful environment to stabilize fun and motivation in the patient. So what are robots at the end of the day good for? I think they open new therapeutic windows. especially for severely affected patients, and they may augment the efficiency and productivity of training with our therapists. So the question, however, is which robot in which patient? This is an example of a hemiplegic patient, as you can see, trained with an anti-factor system, and you see even 3 therapists have considerable difficulties in managing the patient on this device. When you put them, however, into an exoskeleton device, stabilizing posture and the entire postural situation of the patient, then it's much easier to use such a robot in a severely affected patient not able to sit stably on the bedside. Brief look at brain-computer interface. Is the idea, as you know, is to pick up some sort of signal by EEG, by imaging, whatever have you, from the brain, feed that into a processing system, and use this processing system to control external devices. That may be an exoskeleton, maybe a cursor system on a computer in a patient who needs additional motor output or the ability to write again, for instance. And there's growing evidence that brain-computer interfaces may add useful facets and aspects to our repertoire of neurorehabilitation. When you look at the bigger studies and meta-analysis, there is a definite signal that these brain-computer interfaces are superior to other methods. I give you a simple example of an easy-to-use, fairly cheap exoskeleton system to be used in patients with severe hemiparesis. This is to see how the patient is set up. It takes about 2 to 3 minutes to put the EEG cam on the head, connect the electrodes to it, and after that you put the patient into an exoskeleton device, and this exoskeleton makes the patient move his fingers, stretch his fingers again to allow some sort of hand function in an otherwise completely distally hemiparetic patient. When we started with this 20 years ago, it took days before the machine learned to use the thinking of the patient to control the device. Today, these are just minutes, and therefore it's more easy to use. Of course, it's good for bimanual action. Look at this patient with a severe paralysis of the right upper hand, and she cannot open this bag, of course, with one hand. But if she uses the external device, the exoskeleton, that gives her a chance for bimanual action in a useful way again. Virtual reality, augmented reality technology is more and more of interest, especially when it's augmented also with artificial intelligence. Why should we use something virtual as virtual reality in a situation where we want to make the patient really work better in reality? Well, one point, it's not the only point, but one point is that these devices may have to stabilize motivation in a patient. Let's have a look at this example. A child trained for postural improvement on a wooden beam. Okay, you can do that for a while. After 5 to 10 minutes, the child will certainly tire out. It's boring. I don't want to use it anymore. If you put goggles on the child, however, and give them the impression or illusion to work to walk over Niagara Falls or any other thrilled environment as a skyscraper scenery, here, then of course it's much more interesting, it's much more fun, much more thrill in doing this task. Virtual reality is more and more used also for stroke rehabilitation, and looking at the evidence structure, it looks promising. It's not completely convincing yet, and it's not just that they use just VR. The question is how this blends in a specific task and in a specific goal-oriented behavior of a patient. Okay, much more important than all of this high-tech stuff are low-tech options. And I mentioned already constraint-induced movement therapy or forced use therapy. Learning-based coaching strategies and procedures now are the gold standard for patients with moderate to low problems of hemiplegic disorders, for instance. They are not that useful in severely affected patients. Community-based and caregiver support options are extremely important, and that brings us, of course, into the strategy of teaching patient caregivers, relatives, self-training strategies. We come to that. We have learned a lot from elementary rules of learning, motor learning, and also cognitive learning, repetition, the application of feedback, shaping up the task difficulty to what the patient is just able to do. Stabilize motivation, go for active performance and ecological validity. All of these rules are useful and have to blend into the development of new methods and new ideas for motor rehabilitation tools. I mentioned constraint-induced movement therapy has been shown in acute and chronic patients should not be used as an ideological thing to put the patient for hours into a plaster. That is not necessary. More important is to understand the principle that avoiding non-use of the affected site and squeezing the affected site to blend into the activity is most important. So the bad news, as I mentioned, millions of people do not have and will not to decent future have access to decent rehab services. High-tech options are most often still expensive. They're getting cheaper more and more, but nevertheless, they seem to be restricted to the happy few who can afford it. The good news, however, is that reasonable rehabilitation is not really critically dependent on technology. Knowledge about learning and coaching strategies is of high impact. Community and caregiver-based approaches can be widely used, and digital communication tools offer chances for low threshold, easy accessible spread of knowledge and rolling out of the technology in a educational setting. So digital communication tools for low threshold spread of rehab knowledge and procedures is a major tool. WFNR is working very hard on this. We are at the moment designing a complete emulation of a rehabilitation setting in, if you call it the metaverse or some sort of virtual environment. Just have a look at this, how this looks like. You enter the WFNR pavilion and then you will be faced with people who can help you. You can ask questions, you can see therapists, you can see doctors, and you can ask questions. This is all supported by an artificial intelligence, which allow us to answer appropriately to the patient in an interactive way. It's not that you just watch a video, something like this. You have a direct interaction with expert therapists and whomever you want to see. And you can look at certain exercises. These are avatarized. And whatever the patient needs, certain exercises can be shown. The patient can watch it, or the relatives can see what they could eventually do with the patient. And we are currently working to expand this onto to domains of language, to domains of cognitive rehabilitation as well. Okay, so future perspective, we certainly will have further progress in the neuroscientific understanding of brain plasticity, and we'll be able to increase really personalized, focalized rehabilitation, also beyond the horizon of evidence-based medicine. Many of other aspects are certainly coming up, and I think clever epistemology also beyond the framework of randomized controlled trials and meta-analysis is very desirable, and a lot of people are working on this at the moment. This is all I want to tell you for today. The next World Congress, the last one was this year in May in Vancouver, Canada. The next will be in Daegu in South Korea in October 26. Would be great to see you there. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Okay, just for the audience, if you have any questions or comments, please do use the chat room or the question and answer option on your screen so that we can have some interaction concerning questions. To the panel, any questions to my talk? Obviously not. So let's go on. Next speaker will be Tissa Vejaradny from Australia. He is affiliated with the World Federation of Neurology for a long time and also a presidium member of the World Federation of Neurorehabilitation. And he's giving a lecture on primary prevention update. Tissa, it's great to have you with us here.
Very good day to all of you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about stroke prevention on World Stroke Day 2024. Happy World Stroke Day to everyone. The agenda for my talk is as follows. Introduction. I'll talk about modifiable risk factors, preventive strategies and guidelines, role of community and technology in prevention, and I'll spend some time on lessons we learned from World Brain Day campaign and call to action. Many of you are familiar with this paper, as many of us co-authored this paper with our colleague and friend, Professor Valerie Feijing. We told the world just a few weeks back that stroke is indeed the third most common cause of death and fourth most common cause of disability-adjusted life years as per 2021 Global Burden of Disease data. This is while nearly 90% of stroke can be prevented with modifiable risk factors. If you go through this table that I took from the same paper that we published a few weeks back, irrespective of the region where you live, whether it is Central Asia, Europe, Eastern Europe, Australasia, high-income countries, low-income countries, middle-income countries, Africa, East Asia, high blood pressure is the #1 risk factor for stroke, whether it is ischemic stroke or hemorrhagic stroke. And then the #2, there are different contenders from household air pollution from solid fuel in Central Sub-Saharan Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Saharan Africa, South Asia, Asia, and Caribbean, to high LDL cholesterol level in most other parts of the world. Either way, blood pressure, cholesterol, the poor air quality, blood glucose level, body weight, high sodium intake, high alcohol use, diet low in fruit. These are the common culprits of stroke, as you can see globally. So it goes without saying that prevention is cure, and these risk factor modification or mitigating these risk factors are the highest priority across lifespan. You may recall this paper that we put together with our colleague and friend Mayo Awalabis, the leadership published in Lancet Public Health. We talked about a roadmap for primary stroke prevention. We talked about key goals and targets. We talked about the necessity for funding for stroke prevention, specifically in low and middle income countries and other parts of the world as well, for that matter, with the target audience of governments and policymakers. And then we proposed a number of actions, how we could raise revenue, and then for every dollar spent on prevention, yielding more than $10 worth return. And then how we could track the proportion of funding allocated to primary stroke prevention globally. Then we talked about the key or the importance of development of national action plans with a goal of creating country-specific or region-specific action plans on stroke prevention with the target audience of general population as well as at-risk individuals. Again, we talked about actions through using technology such as stroke riskometer, web apps, and self-management, and also educating healthy lifestyles starting early in life and advocating these across lifespan. and then assessing stroke incidence risk factors and the use of health prevention, stroke prevention clinics. Then we advocated for integrative approach to prevention, talking about the importance of collaboration between national, international agencies in relation to non-communicable disease prevention such as stroke. Again, we talked about target audience, actions, and the ways to assess. We also talked about the huge importance of raising stroke awareness, such as this kind of a webinar, to raise awareness on the importance of prevention, rehabilitation, treatment, access, etc. It goes without saying that we constantly need to monitor and research support, and then again ongoing assessment and see how we can improve things to reduce stroke risk, reduce stroke morbidity, reduce stroke mortality, and then track how we correlate those with research support, education, training, etc. So we already mentioned about the importance of stroke prevention and the fact that nearly 90% of stroke can be prevented through modifying these risk factors. So in other words, almost 9 out of 10 stroke that we see, we should feel depressed as we could have prevented them from happening in the first place. You all know that World Brain Day, that is one of the key global activities of World Federation Neurology. We had 10 World Brain Day campaigns thus far from 2024 to 2024. This is one of the most successful advocacy campaigns from any non-governmental organizations. 2024 World Brain Day was dedicated to brain health and prevention. The campaign talked about the huge importance of optimizing brain health through preventing brain diseases such as stroke. We showcased the transformative potential of prevention through both individual actions and global actions and collaborations. 2024 World Brain Day campaign was an immense success. Our president, Professor Wolfgang Grisold, is here today, and we were delighted to see that he was the main guest or chief guest at Chinese Neurological Society event in Beijing, where this massive neurology association dedicated their support to World Brain Day campaign, basically demonstrating the expansive international reach of World Brain Day campaign. And I recall World Federation of Neurorehabilitation conducted a really successful webinar on World Brain Day, again showcasing how collaborative and how expansive the reach of World Brain Day campaign. Not only WFNR, many professional neurological organizations that are national and other non-profit foundations, patient advocacy groups, influencers, academic medical centers, and NGOs came together to amplify promoting brain health and preventive neurology. We talked a lot about stroke prevention as well. The all key 6 regional neurology groups made significant contributions. We had 2 press releases, and those press releases generated over 900 published articles, reaching an audience of over 300 million people worldwide, significantly expanding campaign's reach. The social media throughput this time was phenomenal. As you can see, our Facebook page had over 500,000 visits. LinkedIn had a record the impressions, and Twitter impressions raised from 200%. Twitter is now known as X, as you know. This is a really nice story that I should share with you. This is how one of the western suburb high schools in Melbourne, this is traditionally regarded as a less affluent suburb in Victoria. This 17-year-old high school girl converted the entire school to talk on preventive brain health from Monday to Friday. From Monday they had activities related to physical activity and not smoking. And on Tuesday, they talked about the importance of maintaining normal blood pressure, sugar levels, and normal blood cholesterol levels, including some video games, short tips, and a short quiz. And once on Wednesday, they talked about stress management and keeping a cool, calm mind and managing stress. And on Thursday, they talked about the abdominal circumference and healthy body weight management in a friendlier discussion. And then they had a pajama party and a whole lot of other activities completely dedicating preventive brain health and talking about what we discussed and agreed upon as LifeSTEM to promote brain health, which I'm going to show you soon. Coming back to World Brain Day campaign, 123 neurology societies took part on preventive brain health campaigns, basically bringing a variety of city councils, regional parliaments, brain health friendship groups, schools, universities. WHO had significant activities as well. WFNR, I already mentioned, promoting brain health and prevention and stroke prevention as well. And as I said, the LifeSTEM for brain health, 5 behaviors and 5 number crunching that we designed for that particular high school had been adopted by a number of city councils in Australia. Also, towards the latter part of the year, the entire Australian city councils would endorse LifeSTEM to prevent brain health and prevent strokes nationally. We did prepared a number of videos to promote brain health and prevention and preventive brain health around various days, including Migraine Awareness Day, World Brain Day, and this is a video that we generated to Australian Parliament. To summarize, is making brain health a household name. This has to be a life course. When we talk about stopping smoking, maintaining a healthy body weight, healthy eating, healthy sleeping, and social inclusiveness and social connections, and controlling blood pressure, sugar, cholesterol, abdominal circumference, and better sleep routine, we have to make these activities friendly schools, universities, social clubs, religious and non-religious institutes, government and private institutes, brain health friendly. Prevention is, of course, better than cure.
Christian, it seems to be stuck in some sense. Can we reawaken this?
Christian?
Yes, I'm here. I'm trying to figure it out. It seems that the video won't work until the end.
Yeah.
And managing. We're bringing.
It resumes at the end.
Okay. Well, Tissa is with us. In case there are questions, we can certainly ask him directly.
You can go to the last bit, Christian, then I can talk over them.
Good.
Okay.
These are my references. And last but
So
not
this one,
least,
yes. Maybe if you
Sangeeta.
stop the video and keep the
Yeah.
slide dial to.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So the hope you all can hear me. And as you heard, almost 90% of stroke can be prevented, and this is the lowest hanging fruit. And we should try our best. And this is an open invitation from WFNR SIG Migraine Group, as well as Asian Regional Consortium of Headache, inviting as many of you as possible to join us in beautiful Colombo in 5 weeks' time for the 10th Headache Congress. You know that I chair the special interest group for migraine for WFNR also, and we will have a virtual arm also. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Tissa. Tissa is with us. So, any question? I don't see any in the chat room, but from the panel, any questions to Tissa? Good. I think it was very important again to stress the need of spreading information about stroke prevention. That, of course, generates a lot of advocacy problems, and World Federation of Neurology and WHO is doing a pretty good job in spreading this. Okay, if there are no more questions, I think we should carry on. Our next speaker is my dear friend Nirmal Surya, is the Secretary General of the World Federation of Neurorehabilitation and founder and president of the Indian Federation of Neurorehabilitation, and one of the most active person in this field in the world, I may say. And today he is talking about the mission of brain attack. So we are keen on listening to you, Nirmal.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Volker, for the introduction, and I will share my slide, the mission brain attack. Is it visible to everybody?
I can see it at least.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Perfect. So that's about mission brain attack. See, in India, the issue is whenever somebody get a chest pain, he get worried and go to the hospital and see a doctor, do the ECG, get admitted. But if somebody get a paralysis, they're not bothered because they feel that it may be a blood sugar which is low, or they have got a, tired or exerted. So they miss the stroke symptom. And therefore, I believe that we call it a brain attack. And I started this campaign from May, along with the Association of Physicians of India. You all are aware about the Indian population, and we are the number one today in the world with 17.7% of the population, with 36.6% population is urban, but nearly 70% is rural. And 1.8 million stroke cases occur annually. And the rural also now increasing because of the uncontrolled blood pressure and high diabetes. Stroke account for 2% of total death and 10% of death due to the NCD in India. What is alarming is that more and more strokes are happening in younger as compared to the Western world, and we are, getting 10 years younger stroke as compared to the other world. And this is largely because of uncontrolled risk factor. So urban area is much more earlier, but now the rural area is catching with the mortality rate is about 20 to 30%. And largely because of lack of awareness about stroke symptom and delay in, getting the medical care, particularly the golden hours. We have the program by Government of India, which is called NCD and NPCDCS, of raising awareness guidelines, and some states have also dedicated stroke center. Maharashtra has recently got 5 ambulances, mobile stroke ambulances, which are having equipped with the mobile CT scan. Rate of thrombolysis in India is much less, and a couple of studies which from North India and the South India shows that thrombolysis is nearly 3.6 or 3.4%, and the cost of thrombolytic therapy is about 99.4% of the per capita GNI. And the reason to delay in thrombolysis include the time loss, consulting with the family or local doctor before arriving for the center. About the stroke rehabilitation in India, we did a survey of 200 plus stroke specialists, which included 189 neurologists, 7 physiatrists, and 5 neurosurgeons and 5 intensivists. And 59% responded they have dedicated stroke unit, but only 18.3% had dedicated stroke rehab center. And there's a lack of specialized training in field of the stroke rehab for many professionals. And average cost was about 2,000 rupees for both inpatient as well as a little less for outpatient. And average stay was 19 for inpatient and OPD for 39 days for rehab. But there was no rehabilitation in 70% center and no insurance for rehabilitation. Most of the patient has to pay from the pocket. And this was the poster which we presented at World Stroke Congress on the situation of the stroke rehabilitation in India. What are the challenges? The disease prevalence, I already spoke. Challenge is that patients do not reach stroke-ready center in the window period. And that is where the thrombolysis is only happening at 1% of the population, where requirement is much more. And these are some of the challenges for patient and caregiver. There is a lack of stroke awareness among masses in India. For primary healthcare physician, they are not well trained, and they are role in the stroke chain of survival recognition of symptoms and refer to stroke-ready hospital is lacking. For the infrastructure, there is a lack of appropriate infrastructure for the stroke care. For the physician, there is a lack of understanding among many physicians on key aspect of stroke and the newer management. The stroke team members had lack of stroke training program, and for the hospital, there is a lack of appropriate infrastructure which is required for the stroke care. So with that objective, we started under the Indian Stroke Association, where I'm the president, started a series of scientific program as Mission Brain Attack to provide end-to-end care to people suffering from stroke. An idea is to train physicians and update their knowledge about prevention, risk factor, and management, and recognizing through the BFAST and the rehabilitation. So Mission Brain Attack has 3 arms. Arm 1 is primary prevention, Arm 2 is acute management, and Arm 3 is long-term rehabilitation. So Arm 1 is primary prevention with control of pressure, blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, smoking, stopping, maintaining a healthy weight, regular exercise, limiting alcohol consumption, diagnosis, AF, and management, and healthy diet. The Arm 2 is acute management with recognizing of symptom, raising awareness about the symptom, and we translated the BFAST into the 15 languages, which is balance, eye disturbance, face asymmetry, arm weakness, speech disturbance, and time is the brain. And this is a part of the acute management where immediate recognition of this symptom, rapid transport, urgent CT or MRI, intravenous thrombolysis, and those patients who do not improve within 4.5 hours go for endovascular thrombectomy, antiplatelet to start early, managing blood pressure, sugar control, stabilizing oxygen and support if needed, and finally, initiation of early rehabilitation therapy. And the Arm 3 is multidisciplinary team to provide the rehab for those which are left out with disability even after the best available treatment. So this is how we plan the program. Aim is to train the physician to recognize stroke symptom early, do CT brain, check BP sugar. If all normal, go ahead, use IV tenecteplase, 20 milligram bolus. If no improvement, transfer the stroke center for further management. And many of these physicians were already using this drug for myocardial infarction. So we started from the Varanasi on 12th May, the constituency of Prime Minister, to create a noise about the stroke in the country, and we have many, many more. So by now we have already had 13 programs across the country, where we have done the last Sunday was at Chennai, and now we will continue to have another 12 program across the country. So whole country we will be having the Mission Brain Attack session. And we have now physical attendance of nearly 2,200 and online attendance of about 1,800. So nearly 4,000 physician has been involved in both hybrid modes. So about 4,000 physician has attended and been trained, given the idea about the Mission Brain Attack. So lysis in last 5 months at various places where Mission Brain Attack, except metros, they were much less. And we have been able to, this was the Varanasi where we started. And so that was the launching of the Mission Brain Attack. It continued to go to various places and use involvement of media along with to create awareness in common public. So this is the press addresses which we have been doing regularly. So what is the impact? Impact is that these many places where we have done pan-India, 37 physician by now has done the lysis, and at various places the physician has been able to do that, and that's the impact in last 6 months. And we got feedback from the physicians of content, motivation, thrombolysis after after MBA session, and they were very, very moved and very happy to have confidence to use that. And these are some of the physicians who, after this Mission Brain Attack session, has used the IV thrombolysis at their places, which are relatively a rural area or district level. So this is the Mission Brain Attack started. Now we launched the stroke month on 6th of October from Mumbai, and we have continued to do this program. So what we are going to do in the future is, with collaboration with API, we are going to launch the Telestroke app, which will be able to register the physician from remote area, and we will guide them to use the thrombolysis through the Tele app. So we will do the regular training of physician with API and do the session in Annual Congress of Physicians of India. We will release a monogram on stroke during that conference, and we'll have stroke app for the guide to physician in remote area, and sessions in Annual Conference of ICD, and we'll write a white paper on the impact of MBA to the health authority. So with that note, I think we are working on a plan across the country, and I'm very hopeful that by end of this mission, we'll be able to train about 10,000 physicians across the country, and maybe from 37 will increase to 1,000 thrombolysis for a period of time. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
Thank you very much, Nirmal. This is very impressive, especially how fast you are in doing this. That's always the most impressive for me. But good luck for this. I think it's really excellent, and it works pretty well. But you need a good wording, and Mission Brain Attack is a very good wording for that. Okay, let me see. Any questions from the panel or from the audience? I can't see any. So then we can proceed. So our next speaker is Matilda Leonardi from Italy. She's working for decades with the World Health Organization. She is the ambassador of the WFNR to the World Health Organization. She's very much involved in a lot of international healthcare projects in various fields, from pediatrics to disorders of consciousness. And today, she's going to talk about the WHO eye gap and stroke and possible implications for neurorehabilitation. Matilda, great to have you with us.
Thank you very much, and good World Stroke Day to everybody, and welcome to our WFNR webinar. And I wish. All right. To be greater than stroke is a great sentence for today, but stroke is really great. And as we already heard from other speakers, certainly the burden of stroke has been increasing, and we have, since March this year, in the publication of Lancet Neurology, an idea of the enormous size that all the countries that are in the regions of the global burden of disease have been reporting. The GBD studies on burden of disorders have told us that 43% of population, and I don't know why it's going so fast. Maybe Christian, you can help me because I don't know what's happening here. The GBD burden of disease was telling us that we have many new diseases, but stroke is certainly number one in terms of disability, and it's a great burden for all countries and for all ages, unfortunately. And the provision that we had 20 years ago have been completely shown to be wrong, because we were not expecting that the rising in stroke was going to affect low and middle income countries as much as other countries, bringing the level of disability much higher than expected, as also the level of response to disability much lower than it should be. And we have to consider that in the burden of disease, we are still missing some diseases that will have to be introduced, but certainly stroke is and will remain one of the main diseases that we are going to take care of. And the burden of stroke is also the burden of many other neurological disorders, which is related to many factors, such as the lack of neurologists, lack to the fact that there are precise health plans. We have heard the wonderful Mission Brain Health attack, but I think that we will need a lot of work in many countries, similar to the one to train people. But the point is that we will not have so many people to train because we have a lack in health professionals in most of the countries. And this is going to impact, of course, on the burden. And it is for this reason that we are now working in the era of the so-called neurology revolution, which has been working on the principles provided by the Intersectoral Global Action Plan on Epilepsy and Other Neurological Disorders provided by WHO. The main point that the WHO wanted to say is that, first of all, reduce the stigma, first of all, reduce the impact, but also improve brain health as one of the main goals that the whole community, not only neurological one, but also the whole global health community should increase. Increasing brain health will increase global health. And we never think about brain health, in fact. And the concept of brain health is something that sometimes is lost in translation of what we should do. I think that the world of neurorehabilitation, and particularly WFNR, has well in mind what we should do to improve brain health, acting not only the people affected by neurological disorders, but also on those who could be potential and could be prevented by having a neurological disorder. And the definition of brain health of WHO, it's adopted by the World Federation of Neurorehabilitation, because we do believe that the biopsychosocial approach, the big holistic approach, so one brain, one health, and putting ourselves within the context in which everybody lives, is also providing to neurorehabilitation some fuel for attacking either the problem of brain health at person level with neurorehabilitation per se, but also at environmental level, working on environmental factors that can be facilitators of barriers. The brain health definition of WHO has been also adopted by the WFNR, and the WHO says that it is a state in which every individual can realize their own abilities and optimize cognitive, emotional, psychological, and behavioral functioning to cope with life situations. This doesn't mean that you cannot work on brain health even if you had already a disease like stroke or you're living with stroke effect. Many global association organizations and societies have been adopting and launching their own brain health. Certainly, we have heard the World Federation of Neurology, but also the involvement of many other in initiatives that are spanning from days and webinars towards broader initiatives. Also, the WFNR is very much involved in supporting the WHO gap in the brain health at global level. It has been mentioned by our president that we certainly have initiatives that are spanning from metaverse towards surveys and education. And there are other organizations that are working on brain health and have been adopting some national campaigns. One is the American Academy of Neurology. They did a American Academy Brain Health platform. And we also have a patients organization and specific disease organization like the International Bureau of Epilepsy and the International League Against Epilepsy, who have been adopting as a guide for their work the WHO Global Action Plan. The European Academy of Neurology since 2022 has been working on defining a plan for the 48 countries of Europe in terms of defining a brain health plan and the brain health mission. That is a collaborative action in which we adopt also in the European Academy the definition of brain health, which has been ratified by the WHO. And the same aim as many other big organizations is to decrease the burden. There are many partners that are joining the brain health mission in Europe, but I want to focus on some of the principles of the brain health mission that are very much related also to what we are discussing today, because stroke is certainly a very good case model to identify how a good brain health mission can work. We can work at preserving brain health, working at the main risk factors that can be prevented or can be sort of supported. Increase social contacts, improve mental activity, improve sleep quality, and have a responsible media consumption, have an healthy diet and physical activity. Of course, out of these elements that are important for preserving, there are the elements that are very relevant for protecting the brain, which is the elements of looking at the brain trauma, but also, and it's very relevant for stroke, if we take control of cholesterol, but particularly in conjunction with the world of cardiologists, we look at hypertension as #1 main risk factors for stroke. We could reach also broader people that are tackled not only by neurologists, but also by cardiologists as in a joint effort to reduce the incidence and prevalence of stroke. And I think that the main non-communicable diseases like hypertension, diabetes, and hypercholesterol are something that all people should control, thinking that what they are doing is protecting their brain, but also increasing other protective elements are in the protection, say, guideline that the European Academy has been adopting in its strategy. And then when we think about how the WHO and all the different societies are thinking to diseases and diseases like stroke, of course, they are impacted by the environment. That is the biomedical research environment, but also air quality and psychology, because stress plays a major role in increasing the possibility of stroke, as well as how the economy of rehabilitation for people with stroke is impacting on stroke prognosis, as well as how is the education going and the environment. All these things together are part of campaigns that in a way or another, many organizations are trying to bring on to prove that it is possible to work on brain health, tackling the major neurological diseases, but also preventing the major neurological diseases. Out of the many actions that the European Academy of Neurology is doing, there is a call for those who are members of the European Academy to subscribe for the advocacy training for neurologists. The European Academy of Neurology is certifying brain health ambassadors at the end of a 6-month course that will start again January 2025, and subscription to the course will be open on this November, and people can subscribe. Last year, we had 125 people who applied, and we have been proclaimed 47 brain health ambassadors out of them. But what I think is very useful is what has been released in July this year, which is the implementation toolkit, something that WHO has been developing to support countries in implementing the WHO GAP and trying to reach the goals by 2030. The implementation toolkit is designed for ministries of health, and it is done to assist in planning and decision-making for neurological disorders. So it's not only for ministries of health, it's also providing a guide to all neurologists, physiatrists, neurorehabilitation people, all those interested in brain health, it is providing a guide of what actions can be done so as to increase the brain health and to increase the different areas that are in the WHO gap. What it is interesting, and you see this in the summary, that for today, I've been highlighting two main areas of the implementation toolkit. One is chapter 5 on promotion of brain health, and the other is the precise direction provided to stroke and all the things to eliminate the burden of stroke. The idea of the implementation toolkit it is possible to promote brain health. And I think that here we have been listening how much the WFNR is trying to implement its strategy. The core concept the WHO is telling people to do is that you need to promote brain health at all levels, taking into consideration a lifetime approach, so starting from childhood up to the old age, and by looking at the determinants of brain health that are physical health, which is today one of the main focus of the brain stroke, the World Stroke Day, that is related on sport and physical activity, healthy environments, safety. So the idea is that prevention should also be done at clinical level with the clinical preventive services, but also something that is related to control of risk factors, which goes at a higher level, maybe at the level of governments, but it is also focusing on individual level, because people should be educated to take care of themselves, of their brain health and of their health. Why it is important, this chapter on prevention? Because the promotion of brain health and the prevention of neurological disorders are part of a holistic approach, which really recognize the interconnection between physical, mental, and social factors, and also recognize the interconnection between the person and the environment. And this has benefits for the people, but also for caregivers and for society. So prevention means try to reduce the burden. There is the Lancet Commission on Alzheimer's that has been telling that 40% of dementia can be reduced, but the same can be done with stroke, the same can be done with traumatic brain injury. So prevention should be part of the education within neurological care and should be taught to patients as well as to professionals. And the actions that WHO is proposing at the global level of prevention is that there is a need of an intersectoral platform. WFNR is related to neurorehabilitation, but it is also having many different stakeholders that are attached to it. There are neurologists, there are physiatrists, physical therapists, psychologists. They're all working towards the same goal. And this platform the WFNR is providing to the international community is trying to teach how to integrate policies addressing the key risks and protective factors, as well as determinants of the brain health. And the implementation toolkit is also suggesting policy actions. Of course, every single individual in this call and beyond has to feel that you have a role in promoting brain health, as well as in prioritizing neurological health. Because, of course, very often our patients, neurological patients, remain at the last part in a ranking of priorities, maybe because they are chronic, because sometimes this long-term disease course is bringing to an abandonment by the health sector, but also by the social sectors. And the burden of this very often falls just on the family or on single people. So there is a series of actions that the WHO is suggesting at policy level that go from the big environment towards the building of policy, system, and services that are helping patients, as well as to incorporate a One Health approach, which is also taking care of all the possible elements that can be done. When going into clinical care at the prevention level, and the idea is that there are some actions. I think that what it is interesting for us is action number 3, and these actions are going to reduce the global burden of neurological diseases like routine newborn screening, perinatal care services, important vaccination, but particularly integrate prevention of neurological disorders into programs and intervention, also of infectious diseases which are relevant for us. The need to raise awareness, it is in the implementation toolkit a key point. And the need for research, we haven't been mentioning this so much, but Professor Volker has been saying that WFNR is really working to emphasize which are the social determinants and the risk factors that we could introduce in our research to reduce the burden of stroke. There are many tools and resources in the implementation toolkit, and I wish you to just give a quick look on the fact that beside epilepsy, WHO, responding to international community, has been deciding that 5 diseases are the key model disorders that you could use as an entry point to implement brain health in your country. So you might do a global campaign for all neurological disorders, or in a silos approach, you can choose one disease. And the idea of WHO and that you can approach a specific neurological disorders to improve brain health in your country. And the 5 diseases which have been identified by WHO as Trojan horses, let's say, to introduce brain health, they are brain infections, dementia, epilepsy, migraine and other headache disorders, neurodevelopmental disabilities, and stroke. Of course, then for each disease, they follow the same principle. So, they follow the same principle. So they describe the disease very briefly, and then they go into actions that are at policy level. And particularly for stroke, the idea is to assess national capacity for prevention and control of stroke. We have a problem here. Many countries do not have stroke units. That is why if we are agreeing that stroke is the entry point for improving brain health in a population, the agreement should be, let's develop all is necessary at all levels to reduce the burden of stroke in the acute phase, in the post-acute phase, as well in the rehabilitation, combined with the prevention. Also, if you decide that it is stroke your entry point, you need to increase budgetary allocation for stroke prevention and control and invest in training programs and also strengthen partnership. The other action, and I will not go into details of all of them, just to tell you that each chapter for each disorder is done in the same manner. They're related to clinical care. How can a country improve clinical care for a disease? And for stroke, the idea is to establish national guidelines to treatment of acute stroke. That is where I also see the role of WFNR, which has been providing a very good training for stroke, which had a great success, which has been led by Thomas Platz, our person chair of the education, that has been teaching to so many people around the world how to define and how to treat stroke. So each country should define for stroke guidelines, specific education, implementing comprehensive care and education, and so on. In terms of prevention, it is possible at national level to identify which are the cost-effective interventions that in a specific country are going to pay more. This could be like national control of hypertension, big hypertension campaign, or for example, like we have seen in India, big campaigns related to the promotion of the treatment in the acute phase. In terms of research, the idea that WHO is telling that for stroke, the key point is to train population on raising awareness on symptoms of stroke and necessity of seeking urgent medical care. The intervention that prevents stroke through modifying lifestyle are related to how a campaign can be done at national level for stroke education. There are many tools and resources. One of them the WHO is suggesting is the instruction on how to build up a national campaign on physical activity, how to connect the neurological care with the non-communicable disease prevention that is usually quite advanced in many, many countries, and also to tackle hypertension as one of the risk factors that should be fought. If you have to make a rank and you can choose only one risk factor, then choose hypertension and run for it so that you will reduce the burden of stroke. I think that the importance of brain health has been defined by many countries, as I mentioned. And I also believe that what we can do at the end of the story, I'm sorry for this, I want to close. Sorry, I don't know what's happening. And the main point here is that once we agree that we know what to do, the only point is to decide what to do, and let's get active in all senses. WFNR is there. It's globally supporting all those who wish to do something against stroke in terms of primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention, as well as in defining pathways of care. And this is information that can be provided regarding the Brindle mission. And over to you, Volker, for my brief presentation about what can be done for stroke following the WHO and the WHO IGAP.
Okay, thank you very much, Matilda. A lot of good ideas. I was very much impressed by the WHO toolkit and the IGAP issue. My personal view on this, it's useful, but what we are not very good at the moment is how to campaign for things, right? And my impression is that we are doing things probably in a much too complex and elaborate way. And we have to think about making things very easily understandable, and find platforms for spreading this. And that campaigning as such is a science on its own in some sense today. Don't look at the American election. Don't want to comment on this. But nevertheless, it's a very important issue. And we certainly have to take care of this. We are currently working on a WFNR toolkit implementation system, and we will see how far we can get. My impression is we should be very simple, and we should be very straightforward and avoid too much overloading it. Well, we will see how far we can get. Thank you very much. Anyway, nevertheless, any comments from the panel here? Can't see any. Okay. Thank you very much, Matilda. We go on. Our next speaker is Professor Mayowa Volabi from Nigeria. He is the regional vice president for Sub-Saharan Africa of the World Federation of Neurorehabilitation, one of the most prominent neurologists in Africa, and with a long, many years commitment also in the field of stroke as well as in the field of public health. And Mayowa is going to talk about progress in community-based rehabilitation. I mentioned that is one of the tools we want to use in future for spreading out knowledge of information to broader communities. Okay, we have a video from Mayowa. He is not there. He is. Okay.
Good day, everyone. Let me start by congratulating the WFNR and WSO for this joint symposium on the World Stroke Day. The theme for this year is let's get active every day to be greater than stroke. But of course, one of the key pillars of stroke prevention and control is rehabilitation. So thanks for the opportunity to speak on progress in community-based rehabilitation. So as we know, neurological conditions are the leading cause of disability across the globe and also among the leading cause of death. Stroke alone costs about $900 billion per annum. Dementia costs about $1.3 trillion per annum. The top conditions that require neurorehabilitation across the globe are stroke, neonatal encephalopathy, migraine, dementia, diabetic neuropathy, meningitis, epilepsy, preterm birth, autism spectrum disorders, and nervous system cancer. And this is top 10. Of course, there are other conditions like Parkinson's disease. And there are some variations across different world regions according to the GBT from the 2021 data. And there is also variation across the life course. In early neonatal life, usually neonatal encephalopathy, but then that's followed by meningitis and then headache disorders and then stroke and then dementia towards the end of life. So the pattern is changing, but most of the burden, as we can see, is borne by low and middle income countries in Africa and in Asia. So it's important to talk about the stroke quadrangle, which was one of the great concepts that was proposed and utilized for the pragmatic solutions to reduce the global burden of stroke from the WSO Lancet Neurology Commission, which was launched last year. But this time around, we're going to be focusing on the rehabilitation of killer, meaning access to multidisciplinary care, training for caregivers, capacity building that extends to social services in the community. And you can see there's emphasis on the community. So today we'll be talking about community-based rehabilitation, how we can use community-based rehabilitation to realize the objective of improving stroke care and reducing the burden of stroke across the globe, particularly in low and middle income countries, which are underserved and under-resourced. So again, this is part of the neurology revolution. As you know, the WHO Intersectoral Global Action Plan, launched in 2022, ushered in a new vista, a new era, where neurological conditions and brain health have become central to the health agenda and to developmental agenda across the globe. And this has been exemplified in Cameroon, whereby brain health is central to their health strategy and, in fact, all activities of government. So global synergistic actions are required to improve brain health for human development and also to defeat stroke. Brain health has to be central. Brain health has to be central not only to development but also to physical, mental health, social health, planetary health, and spiritual well-being. Why? Because the brain is actually our greatest asset. So again, rehabilitation is important in the neurology quadrant. So we're going to be focusing on rehabilitation, and as we know, rehabilitation has to do with realization of potential, re-enablement, resettlement, role fulfillment, readjustment. Stroke is beatable. Stroke is not the end of life. If stroke happens, that does not mean that individual cannot still actualize himself or herself, given necessary support and rehabilitation. And that's what we are talking about today. How do we make this available to the vast majority of people who require this in the communities at the right time? So as we know, rehabilitation is a recovery spiral using an holistic model. Usually it starts with an assessment and evaluation. When a stroke happens, depending on which part of the brain is affected, different impairments, disabilities, and limitation of function and participation could occur. So this needs to be evaluated holistically, and then realistic goals have to be set, and then therapeutic intervention, which is usually multidisciplinary. Occupational therapy, speech and language therapy, physiotherapy, cognitive therapy, holistic therapy, psychotherapy, energy therapy. The essence is not just to prolong life by adding years to life, but to add life to years to improve functioning, quality of life, and in fact add meaning to life and help the individual to achieve the best, to attain his peak in life, regardless of what has happened. So it's a mission, and WHO is involved in this mission. And in fact, WHO has a unit headed by Alakos for ensuring that by year 2030, everybody who needs rehabilitation accesses it, particularly also for stroke rehabilitation. So, of course, the LMIC has the greatest burden, but paradoxically, they also have the least resources to combat this, and that's why community-based rehabilitation becomes very important in the continuum of care. And it's important to have targeted disease-specific approach like we are doing today for stroke rehabilitation. So there are packages of interventions for rehabilitation launched by the WHO. Some of these toolkits can be useful for stroke rehabilitation. This is again expressing that conundrum. Largest burden in low and middle income countries in the global south, and the leanest budget and spending on health in the global south. So most of the burden and out-of-pocket payments, those are the challenges. And so the realistic economic model would then be that while we are trying to promote brain capital, which is central to human capital development, we would, of course, want to reduce price and increase supply and reduce demand. But the point is, even right now, many people in LMICs are not aware of rehabilitation services. And so we have to actually increase the demand as well as increasing the supply while seeing how much we can also reduce the price through community-based rehabilitation. So we have to promote affordable access. Now, we have to position community-based rehabilitation in the context of the continuum of care. It may not be the first port of call or the best setting for all patients. There is acute and hyperacute and subacute rehabilitation. And then, of course, transition to inpatient care, from inpatient care to outpatient care, and then before patients go to the community, and then long-term sustained rehabilitation. So acute, subacute, outpatient, home-based or community-based, and then long-term rehabilitation is a care continuum. So we need to really know the right time to institute community-based rehabilitation. So some of these are articulated in the clinical pathways in stroke rehabilitation, which was supported by the WFNR and is an open access book. On stroke rehabilitation, this is something that everybody should go through. And we have a course to also support this, a certificate course, which we've been running for years with Thomas Flats, which I co-share as part of the clinical pathways specialist interest group of the WFNR, ably supported by the WFNR hierarchy and presidency and the Pope. So evolution of CBR. CBR is not new since 1970s up till now. Is about putting the community at the very center and ensuring that there is a positive attitude to provide rehabilitation services closest to the patient, and patient can recover and be self-employed. There's awareness creation, there is advocacy, and the people with disabilities are mainstreamed. So support, love, and care, and of course, anti-stigmatization. Principles that should be involved in the components of community development. Those are some of those principles. So the models, of course, has to be, initially it was just a medical model of rehabilitation, and then a social model, and then biopsychosocial model. But really, it's a community-based model now with inclusive development. So rehabilitation pyramid within universal health coverage. This is also very important. Universal health coverage is important to ensure that people have access and that is really not out of pocket payment. So rehabilitation must happen in the communities, closest to the patient. Community development strategy, that's what it's all about. For improving the quality of life of people with disabilities, meeting their needs, ensuring they have equal opportunities and their rights are protected. So a core team is required to be built up in that community, and a network of strategic partners within the community stakeholders, families of disabled members, and of course international policies and national policies and guidelines which can help facilitate community-based rehabilitation. Like what we are doing today, advocating for this, can help different communities to spring up and implement community-based rehabilitations. So home and family-based, and near the location where the patient is, and in communication and in conjunction with cross-referral system or mechanism with health facilities as may be required. The principles must promote dignity, integration into society, solidarity with the person with disability, social justice, and of course equality and equity. So these are the principles: flexibility, adaptability, advocacy, human rights perspective. All of these are very important. So it addresses the impairment, improves functioning, and there are benefits to the community because it builds awareness of the diversity within the community and fosters more positive attitudes towards people with disabilities, and ensures that people with disabilities are also able to contribute to community development. And to ensure people with disabilities are seen as able, there is ability in disability. So these are some of the principles which I have discussed for. Active involvement of community members, engagement with community agencies, inclusion of diverse perspectives, partnerships with local organizations and NGOs, holistic support networks, access to resources, peer learning and empowerment, social inclusion and stigma reduction. All of these are very, very important. And then local expertise, task shifting, task sharing, and cultural relevance. Participatory decision making, holistic approach, advocacy, resource mobilization and sustainability, including universal health coverage, capacity building, skill transfer, social inclusion, and awareness are all very important for community-based rehabilitation. Cultural sensitivity and adaptability, sustainability, empowerment, collaboration, networking, those are all very important. So, of course, usually you should start with needs assessment from that community, stakeholder engagement within that community, developing the strategies for implementation, and then success stories and examples. And that is the continuum to get this sorted. And empowering community leaders, resource strengthening. Common issues include monitoring and evaluation, very important, but in addressing barriers like inadequate community engagement, resource constraints, stigma and discrimination, lack of intersectoral collaboration, geographical barriers, and monitoring and evaluation. So innovation and trends include technology, using telemedicine, advocacy, South-South collaboration, holistic approaches, inclusive design, and community-based or community-driven research to further improve this. So, and a few examples are happening: mobile therapy unit in India, South America, in Brazil, task shifting in Kenya, and so on and so forth. Adaptive sports in the US. So wearable sensors, tele-rehab, brain-computer interfaces, gaming, these are all innovations that can be included. So, and to show that its ability in disability, on 2nd December 2022, during the WHO Global Report on Health Equity for Persons with Disability was being launched, the moderator in that meeting, you can see, says, so I'm the moderator for today, and the first thing I need you to know is that I am deaf and blind. So I'm not hearing or seeing what is happening in the room. I was the first deaf blind student to go to Harvard Law School. And the moderation was superb, was superlative, was excellent, regardless. So the principles of rehabilitation are based on those of the Convention on the Protection of Rights of Persons with Disability. They are part of human diversity and humanity, and equal opportunity and equality is required. And the matrix includes not only dealing with their health, but education, livelihood, social needs, as well as empowerment, including advocacy, community mobilization, political participation, recreation, leisure, education, particularly in early childhood, primary, secondary, non-formal, vocational training, and they should also be able to earn a living. So that is what the CBR matrix is all about. Unfortunately, I can't go into the details of that. So community-based rehabilitation program is 24 hours a day because people live in communities and they're in those communities 24 hours a day. So people with disabilities are at the very center, the community supports, community leaders, local authorities, national governments also have to support, but the base is actually the community. So illustrating with the Lancet Commission report with emphasis on rehabilitation, the rehabilitation pillar, and using holistic concepts of implementation science, including implementation cycle, as well as the Mitchell's theory for behavioral change, capability, opportunity, motivation. So the emphasis that it should be multidisciplinary, innovative low-cost interventions, training of rehabilitation potentials, quality of life skills for assessment of progress, telemedicine and digital channels can be used. And then research is required to validate the effectiveness of educational tools for stroke rehabilitation, including tele-rehabilitation, community-based rehabilitation, and regenerative medicine. So family is a proximal source of care. Family members are very important in community-based rehabilitation models. Specialists are required, but also we might need task shifting to community health workers. Community members are also important. Civil society are important. Policymakers are important. Community-based rehabilitation staff, family trainer, coordinators, superintendents, they are all very important to support community-based rehabilitation. Identify persons with disabilities, provide simpler therapeutic interventions, and support and assist them. And work with, there should be a referral system to work with health facilities as at when due. So therapies are needed to promote CBR, research for low cost effective pragmatic solutions, enlightenment, advocacy, and training, webinars, workshops, like what we are doing today. Again, to emphasize that in LMICs, across the globe, rehabilitation services in terms of quality and quantity is not sufficient, and that is most pronounced in low and middle income countries, particularly in Sub-Saharan Africa and Asia. So it's important to build the evidence base for primary healthcare centers and community-based rehabilitation, and that is already building. including in the neurological quadrant. Ecosystems are required. The level of the WHO, World Bank to support in terms of funding, implementation partners, commissioners as advocates in their countries, providers, policymakers, patients, payers, and the general population are all part of this. So just to showcase some of the activities to promote access to rehabilitation care in Africa, some of the conferences that training programs that we've had, again, emphasizing the CBR matrix. And of course, the purpose is to attain Ikigai, where passion and mission and profession and vocation intersect for the person living with disability. And some of these ideas are going to be developed further in the Lancet Commission on Neurorehabilitation, which I'm humbled and privileged to share. Many of you are already participating in this. Some of the other activities we are using to promote rehabilitation on the African continent, including training programs, talents program for scholars, postgraduate program for data science, in promoting brain health. And in 2028, we do hope to host the World Congress for Neurorehabilitation on the African soil for the first time. Again, I want to thank everyone for being part of this. Let's get active every day and be advocates for community-based rehabilitation to defeat stroke. Together, we are greater than stroke. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayowa. That was a very explicit demonstration on all the problems with community-based rehabilitation. Nevertheless, we think that that's certainly one of the proper ways to go. But again, I think we have to eventually make it a little bit simpler and even more straightforward. We will see. Okay, any questions? Let me see from the chat room. Not really. So we can proceed. Our next speaker is Professor Thomas Platz, who is heading the Committee on Education for the World Federation of Neurorehabilitation. He is, for many, many years, working in the field to convince people that evidence-based medicine is a good idea. I do not always follow him in this respect, he knows that. But nevertheless, he has done quite a lot to bring forward evidence-based concept in neurorehabilitation worldwide. And one of the major efforts are his courses and this very nice ebook on stroke rehabilitation, which had tens and thousands of clicks so far. At the moment, WFNR is working on another ebook on pediatric rehabilitation and a third ebook on neuropsychological rehabilitation, and we hope that it will be as effective as Thomas's book was. He is going to talk about promotion of stroke rehabilitation based on evidence. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Okay.
Thank you very much, Volker, for this kind introduction. And thanks to the many authors of this book, 14 author groups from the WFNR, and congratulations to this marvelous World Stroke Day event today. Conflicts of interest is my funding, basically, and public funding, industrial funding. A short overview, epidemiology, we have that covered, services, stroke care, and where's the evidence? And does evidence have a role in improving services? We might want to see that. Burden of disease, we have heard that this afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you are, several times. The burden of disability by stroke is enlarging, is increasing considerably, has been over the last 3 decades, and most likely will further increase due to several demographic and lifestyle changes. And so the Lancet Commission on Stroke, together with the WHO and World Stroke Organization, looked into 84 countries. What Mayowa explained about the pillars of stroke services, and what you see here is in these 84 countries, the kind of percentage where you have a poor, acceptable, or a good service is that acute service, there might be good services in many countries, in some not, especially low and middle income countries. But if you look into the rehabilitation pillar, it's rather poor in many low and middle income countries, the services. that are available, but even in high-income countries, this cannot be regarded as sufficient. And that, at the same time, when you know, and that is a very good piece of evidence, looking whether stroke rehabilitation, where multidisciplinary teams are in a coordinated way providing healthcare for stroke, especially with rehabilitation means, if you do so, there is very stable evidence that that will prevent disability and will keep people, even after stroke, independent. So there's actually quite good evidence to set up such stroke services to prevent disability and institutionalization. And there are various ways in detail how we can promote recovery of function, but also promote compensatory behavior or adaptations that make people fulfill their everyday life activities, duties, participation. So there's a lot that we can offer in neurorehabilitation, and it needs to be offered along the continuum of care, because it's a lifelong journey of patients, stroke survivors, and some of the body dysfunctions, impairments might remain for a long time, and there may be for a long time the potential benefit of neurorehabilitation, of stroke rehabilitation. And now, if you want to address what are the interventions that are actually generating a benefit, that are acceptable, and what are the resources that you need to have and apply, then you need the evidence. And you need exactly to know for whom, the type of patient and clinical problem you want to address by rehabilitation, for whom, the patient, what kind of intervention in comparison to what other type of intervention is achieving which goal that is patient relevant. And only if you have this kind of information at hand, you will be in the position to have really efficacious and effective neurorehabilitation. And of course, the type of clinical trial that is backing up this information, that is providing the information, is pivotal, because our confidence in the estimates of these therapeutic effects, the benefits, the harms, the acceptability, will depend on the internal validity of the trials that we see. And so really looking into the evidence and critically appraise the evidence will lead to the position where we can judge, where we can appraise of the certainty that we can gain from the trial data. And based on that, based on the certainty of the estimates of therapeutic effects, we can then deduce clear, exact, explicit practice recommendations. And I think that's a very important orientation that we can give. And so we have maybe very strong evidence and can say, okay, this ought to be done, or we do have good evidence to say, okay, that should be done. And at times we might not be as certain, still can say that is an option that is backed up by evidence. So there's something positive in the evidence. It gives assurance, it gives orientation. And the orientation is getting more and more necessary because, as Volker has illustrated with another slide, a number of trials that are relevant for healthcare in stroke rehabilitation are increasing considerably. And now the brain is subserving all the functions that we have in our everyday life. It's about perception, reasoning, thinking, language, communication, motor behavior, anything we do, emotion. It's all based on the brain, and it might be affected by a stroke, and there might be opportunities, evidence-based interventions to improve function, to improve the activity capacities, and to promote participation by that way. But since the information is kind of exploding, and we really need to look at it in detail and comprehensively and critically at the same time to filter out the orientation that is backed up by knowledge, it's important to have many different expert groups looking into subdomains. And that has been done by these author groups, 14, and put together. And we're very happy that we could offer both these practice recommendations, and you can download them. And we could, as a group together, we could offer teaching courses where the experts in the field provide this knowledge, but provide it in a way that we also give hints how to put it into practice, how to implement it. Now let's move forward. What about this type of question, implementing, changing it? It's more than what do we know. Evidence and practice recommendations is still what do we know. And now the question is, what do we do? And World Stroke Organization, World Federation Neurorehabilitation, WHO. Now, WHO is a strong partner here, and WHO and Matilde has shown some of the work, and there's much more that can be used looking into how can healthcare systems for stroke rehabilitation and other forms of rehabilitation be built up. So wonderful tools that you can use to promote and establish healthcare along these lines, how to put knowledge into practice. But what you could do in addition is look at the WFNR book of evidence-based practice recommendations, so there is solid knowledge, and then look at the continuum of care and reflect for your region, for the situation where you are working, where you are in. Are these recommendations being implemented? Is the type of healthcare service that is needed and that's beneficial for stroke survivors, is that available? And if not, what to do about it, how to move forward? And then you would need the stakeholders. There are these evidence-based practice informations that give orientation on how to develop the system, but then to develop the system should be and can only be a regional activity involving all the stakeholders, the stroke survivors, the healthcare professionals, the politicians, the payers, and then in a structured process of implementation, you might actually put this knowledge into practice. And as Mayova mentioned, there is now another partner that helps to prepare and to promote and to facilitate that we bring knowledge to practice. And that's the Lancet Commission on Neurorehabilitation that wants to identify within this broad evidence base the pragmatic solutions. And that is what Volker is alluding to. It needs to be a kind of low budget in a way, but in resource limited situations should still be applicable. What are the type of interventions that might be beneficial, that do not need so many resources and still at the same time generate benefits, are highly acceptable, affordable, and therefore can benefit the many people, stroke survivors around the world in need. And that is some of the kind of core goals that this commission would like, based on science, would like to add and kind of generate even some more help along these lines together with everybody else in the field, of course. And so let me summarize. Stroke, okay, is a really a major burden of disability caused by stroke. And there's a lot of research going on. And if we're talking about evidence, we mean clinical research where the results are directly applicable to clinical practice. And it's very important to critically appraise that and to make the best of it and give clinicians orientation. And if we have that knowledge as a background, we can then start to use it on the implementation side, on the education side, and that would have to be based on the regional context. So by this evidence, kind of a core concept that is providing this type of evidence. It's not the solution yet, but a very solid backbone, kind to speak, for improving healthcare in stroke rehabilitation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Thomas, thank you very, very much indeed. I very much like the idea of pragmatic solutions, to be to be honest. And of course, we will base everything on some sort of scientific background and scientific information. But the point is really to be as pragmatic and, in some sense, if you allow me to say that, as simple and straightforward as possible, if we really want to bring things forward. And we hope that our digital communication tools will be helpful to spread this educational knowledge on a very low key basis, and on a really wide rollout perspective. We will see. Thank you very much again. And let me see if there are any questions from the panel at the moment. Well, eventually, or the final discussion. Okay, thank you very, very much again. And our next speaker is Professor Abhishek Srivastava from India. He is one of the most active persons in Indian neurorehabilitation. We know each other for a long time. He's a member also of the Presidium of the World Federation of Neurorehabilitation. And today, Abhishek is going to talk about technology in stroke rehabilitation. Go ahead, Abhishek. Good to have you with us. I think you must unmute your mic. Good.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, we can see the slide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. My topic is, how does technology make a difference in life people after stroke? The evidence and the experience, both of them. See people like this with a bad stroke on a first case, MCA stroke, a guy with a bad ICS stenosis, or a person with hemorrhagic stroke. How do you think they are at 1 year post-stroke, lying in bed somewhere in the disorder of consciousness? No, they are in the community. I'll show you how it's being done with the help of technology, current era of evidence-based medicine. When I was studying medicine, I was told we can't change the brain, but now we have evidence to show that we can thrombolize the clot and we can have new activity in the first few days. What happens in the first few months and first few weeks is brain recruit additional area to perform new function, or other part of brain takes over function. This ability of brain to change is called neuroplasticity, and do it in two ways: by intensive training or by newer treatment like medications, stimulation, or HBOT. We talk focus primarily on intensive training with the help of different technologies. In the last 20 years, a lot of things have come up which are actually evidence-based to some extent. We'll see some of them one by one. This guy is doing his PhD in 1993, and there was a lot of concept of making people to walk on body weight support in spinal cord injury. It didn't help. On the same premise, it came in stroke, published long back. Even in chronic stroke patients, this training can help people walk better and walk faster. Then came robotic systems, which are ankle-based, stationary trainers, exoskeleton-based trainers, foot plate-based trainers, or the overground gait trainers. The most common used are the exoskeleton system. This is the Locomat, body weight support to offer to body weight. There's a robot to make you walk on a treadmill, the visual feedback. And Cochrane review really gives evidence in rehab, but it shows that every fifth dependency in stroke can be avoided with our training with conventional therapy. Always remember, this is very useful in the non-ambulatory stroke patients in the early rehab. It is not for ambulatory, it's only for non-ambulatory stroke patients. Then the opposite robotic systems, we can have exoskeleton-based, end-effector-based, only for hand and wrist therapy, machines have come. The most commonly used is called as exoskeleton-based system. You're putting your arm in exoskeleton, which can sense and move, give a computer task. During a daily task like walking, driving, cutting an apple in the computer in front of you, and you can analyze how much movement you are making. Remember, God has made hand to use, not to exercise. This is not passive training, this is active assistive training to make your hand better and do 1,000 times enough functional movement in a day, one therapy session. Always remember, they are good machines, you get good motor power to learn daily tasks in conventional therapy. So both work synergistically, help our patients move their hand better. This is an example of an Armium power machine. Hand is an exoskeleton, you're moving it, daily task. Remember, what you can't do, it will sense, able to complete the task with better functional abilities. We call this hand studio, then we can use an Armio power when there is very minimal power in the shoulders, shift to Armio spring, we need to focus on forearm and the elbow, and then Amidio, only hand is involved. Again, Cochrane review has shown that training with robotic system with conventional training help to a better ADL, better arm function, better arm muscle strength, and very rare dropouts and very less adverse effects. Another technology is called as dynamic posturography. You can make a person stand on a perturbated scale and you can see the feedback in front of you with the computerized training, give perturbations, very useful for training for perception and balance. And we have published long back, 15 years back, that chronic stroke patients who have a tendency to fall, you get this training to walk better in the community with less number of falls. Gait analysis, people with stroke, when they are walking, we can do it with video camera, you know, with 3D analysis also, in one of our lab. Patient first follow-up at 3 months, you can see not bending his knee, he's landing on his heel, ankle DF and swing phase. So he had a stiff, equine stiff knee couple. We give him botulinum toxin to his ankle plantar flexor, rectus femoris. Now you can see now his knee is bending in the swing phase, ankle also is the swing phase. He's able to walk better. We have FES systems now, which can be used for primary ankle DF strengthening while walking. And Cochrane review says that gives better step and stride length, even better motor strength, normative movement in chronic stroke survivors. EMG biofeedback, again, can be used in conjunction with concurrent physical therapy, have good effect in the gait quality in chronic stroke patients. Virtual reality used very commonly now. People have Xbox at home. Cochrane review says that it is good for improving hand function. And ADL, not very good for grip strength or gait speed, but better arm function, better activities ADL. You do at home also, on Xbox, if you have to connect. Brain stimulation, non-invasive. We all know that post-stroke, the affected hemisphere decreases excitability, and the normal hemisphere increases excitability. We have to balance it. How we can do it? We can do it by accelerating the RTMS to the injured cortex, or another TDC has an injured cortex. We also know that the normal hemisphere inhibits the injured hemisphere. It's called as TCI, which we can reduce by an inhibitory RTMS or cathedral TDCS. What is the review? Review, the meta-analysis says that if you can combine the training of TDCS with OTPT and virtual reality, it is much more effective, especially for upper limb function and recovery in stroke patients. Same way, RTMS has both inhibitory effects. It is useful to improving Figelmeier scales, significant effect, and Barthel index. Always remember, the RTMS depends upon the severity of hemiplegia. You're doing it for mild or moderate severe stroke, at what stage you are using it, chronic or acute, and what type of technology you're using it, right, left side, also depend the recovery, but it has very good role to play in moderate to severe strokes, especially in subacute chronic stage. BCI coming in a big way, you can acquire the brain signal and use it to do a basic task like using a virtual reality or a robotic or haptic device or electrical stimulation. Again, the meta-analysis says that the Figelmeier scores improvement in the upper limb is significant as compared to conventional means and can be good armamentarium to add with conventional therapy in subacute chronic patients with stroke or upper limb motor recovery. One of our, this is a use for a BCI, simple BCI device. The lady who cannot type or use her hand, but you can use with a simple EEG device, head tracking. She can write with the help of head movements on a computer. My name is this. Very simple thing can be very useful in communication with such patients. So research have shown that intensive training protocols, when combined with conventional rehab measures, help. And you can see it here. The conventional supplementary motor area setting up in the brain with advanced training on the robotics. This actually helps. Also remember, if whole brain turns red in fMRI, it is an inverse correlation to recovery. The relevant area has to fire to show a better outcome in such patients. We also published in the same way in chronic stroke patients who were 2 to 3 years to 8 years post-stroke. Some were even therapy naive. When they were trained for intensive training of conventional plus robotics, actually 1/3 learned to walk, and those who were walking learned to walk better, even in chronic stage post-stroke. It's coming up in a big way. Many featuring it, the virtual aid in the technology, use of neurowiring, neuro rehab, with the facility in rehab in a big way. Our experience, this is 2019, 2097 years, when there were 520 stroke patients with the help of rehab robotics and advanced technologies. Just a couple of examples. Young guy, ICS stenosis, family came to us 1 month, intubated, ventilated, decapacitectomy, PEG, TT, police, what to do? Big stroke. The left side guy was then 20 years old. Let's get him a system. Underwent comprehensive rehab. At that time, the boy was awake, alert, had aphasia, dysphagia, TT, PEG, catheter, hemiplegia, right side. Need a lot of medical care, mechanism of stroke, prophylaxis, antispastic medication, botulinum toxin, pharmacotherapy for improving his aphasia, fluoroscopy for swallowing, UH, PVR, underwent decannulation. A lot of therapies, OT, PT, speech, swallow, bladder bowl, returning, sprinting was done. But remember, he was 4 weeks inpatient rehab, 2 months post-stroke minimal motor recovery. For such patient, therapy is not enough. It's not anyone. You can see it, one session you want to go about 100 meters. They can walk 1.500 steps per day, which you can't do normal therapy. You combine training robotics with conventional therapy, get better motor recovery. That's how we went 6 months. This is MRI, left side, back, left, ICMCS stroke. He joined college 2 3 years post stroke. Hand is still weaker, has some anomic aphasia still. Another lady who came to us was on 17, the big right MCS stroke at about 3 months. And she was told 3 months period is over, you're not able to walk now. Again, you need comprehensive neuro rehab, antispastic medicines, depressant medication, vitamin D, OTPT, all therapies, botulinum toxin. And then this is training on the army of power. You can see Barthel, Figelmeier, and Mass course. And they came to army of spring, then to Amedio. Remember, she was doing these therapies along with conventional OTPT every day. This is how she went home, walking independently, able to do daily activities. Last few cases, this lady has a postpartum ischemic cardiac, 50% fraction. She was told, don't do anything, just be in bed. And you can see intensive training is able to trigger the supplementary motor area. These are the hand and ankle areas in the functional MRI. How she became ambulatory, actually underwent a heart transplant at 2 years. She was so good that she depended on daily activities. Another guy has Apla syndrome, bad hemorrhagic stroke. This is at discharge now. He works himself and drives his own car, works with his father in the company. So remember, we all know that we can reperfuse the brain in first few hours. We can retrieve the clot. We can do decompensatory cranectomies. Swelling comes down in first few weeks. We also know that brain titles change. That dies on by 3 months' time. That's why we say there's no more recovery after 3 months. But actually, wrong concept. If you start a lot of training in the first few weeks, you get something new plasticity, doesn't die down so early. So we call that sixth concept. Our patients get intensive therapy in the subacute stage, at least 6 therapy sessions, 6 days a week for minimum 6 weeks, which includes physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech, swallow therapy, cognitive training, robotics, whatever is required to program to harness what we can get back in the brain when it is ready to fire. This is our rehab team. Thank you very much. Just an opportunity to invite all of you to the next IFNR Con 2025, which is in Ludhiana in March. Mark your dates. Thank you.
So, Abhishek, thank you very, very much indeed for a very nice and comprehensive review on what technological options are there, how much evidence is there for using them, and what perspectives may be there. Any questions to Abhishek? Okay, not at the moment. So thank you very much again, and we go on. The next speaker will be Professor Sawarazim Wasti from the United Arab Emirates. He has a long tradition in working with the World Federation of Neurorehabilitation in various special interest groups. He's the regional vice president for the Gulf region, and he was very much involved, as we mentioned earlier, in the recent course on stroke rehabilitation in Abu Dhabi. Today, he is attacking a very interesting and I think compelling aspect. We came across that some months ago, and he very much worked this out, and that's the idea to define minimal standards for certain aspects of care in various settings, and we feel that may become a new tool for quality improvement. I think he is not with us because he's busy in the estate and another meeting, but I think we have a video. So, Christian, you could play this now.
Yeah, thank you, the World Federation for Neurorehabilitation, for inviting me to speak on this occasion of World Stroke Day on a topic that is very close to my heart, that is to define minimal standards in stroke rehabilitation. So in the next 10 minutes or so, we'll have a look at what we believe the minimal standards to be and how we can come to an agreement in applying these. What do we have as barriers in stroke rehabilitation? We have restricted access to acute stroke services, which means that still a large population of the world are not able to access the right service at the time of the stroke, as they cannot access the reperfusion therapies, and thereby the effect of the stroke is more catastrophic than it would otherwise have been. They also have restricted access to adequate medical care after the stroke and gather complications through their early journey after stroke, such as recurrent infections, UTIs, and what have you, which further deteriorate the possibility of a potentially better outcome. Restricted access to adequate early rehabilitation after stroke. We know that early rehabilitation after stroke is essential, as this is the period of most heightened neuroplasticity, and if provided by a well-trained team, then the outcome of stroke can be positively affected. There is also restricted access to long-term rehabilitation after stroke, and patients are left to attend to their own by then possible disabilities, or for their families to manage them with difficulties that they have gathered due to the impairments of stroke. There is also restricted number of adequately trained stroke care providers, especially in the area of neurorehabilitation, whereby we do not have enough occupational therapists, speech therapists, or for that matter, properly trained neurotherapists to treat all the patients that we need to. So, how to overcome these barriers that we have just defined? We need to set standards of care and agree on implementing these. The standards should be universally applicable. As such, these should be clinically effective, cost effective, and deliverable. And therefore, these may be referred to as minimal standards because all services should be able to adhere to these standards. Glasgow in 2014 introduced the concept of minimal intervention needed to produce change, and this approach may be useful in setting intervention standards for early stroke care. And refers to the essential and a basic criteria or standards that must be met for a service to be considered acceptable or functional. So at this point, we are not talking about the expertise of the professionals who are delivering the service, but actual service that has to be formulated to deliver a adequate standard of care. And by service, we mean right kind of um, environment, right kind of space, equipment, and similar sort of amenities. Such requirements set the lowest level of acceptable performance or capability and ensure that the essential elements needed or necessary for proper operation or compliance and outcomes are in place. The term minimum standard is often used to describe the least permissible condition or procedure required to demonstrate a basic level of performance or care, and this is what we are most interested in from clinical perspective. And a minimum intervention refers to the least amount or degree of action or treatment required to achieve a desired outcome or to address a problem effectively. The concept is often applied in various fields, including healthcare, education, and environmental management, to minimize risks, costs, and disruptions while still achieving necessary results. The service plan from the perspective of minimum requirements is based on need to develop operationally satisfactory service. And as we already said, the service should have adequate space, access to patients, and also right equipment for therapists and clinical staff to deliver the service with. We also have to define the standards needed to operate the service satisfactorily on day-to-day basis, and we also have to identify the minimum interventions that are necessary to intervene with an intention of securing a positive or favorable outcome. An example of this would be to have a right kind of environment to be able to diagnose dysphagia after stroke. There should be a right group of people who can then manage dysphagia with the right equipment, and there should be a minimum expertise amongst the clinical staff in inserting and thereafter managing a feeding tube. Minimal intervention, the rationale for this of introducing a change is very obvious. The numerous effective interventions are available, but not widely or equitably distributed. So we know that the stroke patients do not access the perfusion therapies readily. So the next best thing that we can do is at least to have aspirin prescribed at the right time for the ischemic strokes. So low income population and low resource setting face challenges in finding the time, resources, and infrastructure to support necessary or the supports necessary to produce successful outcomes from intensive interventions. Manpower and suitably trained professionals may be difficult to access to effectively deploy interventions. Thus, many existing evidence-based interventions have low or limited reach among individual patients and reduced adoption by the clinical and public healthcare settings. There comes the concept of comparative effective research, because we have to have economically viable solutions to set minimal standards, so that not just saying that you need to do this, we also have to identify how a standard can be put in place. A number of interventions have been shown to be effective, but it is often difficult for consumers, practitioners, and researchers to know which is the best and to distinguish any meaningful difference in outcomes and cost effectiveness. These concerns have in part given rise to comparative effective research or comparative effectiveness research. For example, aspirin for cardiovascular disease prevention is an example, or for stroke for that matter. Aspirin is a widely available, minimal, low-cost, effective intervention. A pragmatic, cost-effective research perspective suggests that more expensive, intensive, or aggressive interventions should be proven to be more clinically and cost-effectively suitable than aspirin to be recommended for use universally. So in that case, if we say Plavix is to be prescribed, but Plavix is more expensive, but the effectiveness of aspirin and Plavix are similar, then we have to say to the patient that, look, you can take aspirin, which is cheaper and which is more likely that you will be able to afford and continue to take, and that is completely fine. However, if Plavix was shown to be more effective than aspirin, then we will have to find a way to fund Plavix for that patient. So comparative effectiveness research strategy for identifying effective interventions is based on the concept of minimal intervention needed to produce change. This was coined by Robert Coyle in his personal communication in 2010. Minimal intervention to instill change is defined as the minimal or lowest level of intervention intensity, expertise, and resources needed to achieve a clinically significant improvement in a specified outcome for a patient, for a particular target population under a particular set of conditions. When delivered by a specified type of staff or interactive modality. The goal is to provide an anchor or standard to help compare different interventions to determine the relative improvement based on their relative costs. By defining and documenting the minimum intervention needed for change is a given in a given content area, it is possible to define the least costly, easiest to administer intervention that are most likely to be disseminated. So with that in mind, we have prepared a preliminary document on stroke rehabilitation standard, and that has been drafted. In doing so, we have covered all episodes of stroke rehabilitation, and these include hyperacute stroke rehabilitation, which we define as being a period either in intensive care unit or up to 72 hours, whichever is the shortest. Then we established that acute stroke rehabilitation that is post-acute or after 72 hours is also necessary for the duration the patient stays in acute medical setting for reason of medical instability. And both these level of care are very important, and we have to define the standards for rehabilitation in these two stages of stroke care, as this is where patients gather second hits and second injuries and complications which can worsen the outcome in the long term. Post-acute rehabilitation is after discharge from acute care and still in need of inpatient rehabilitation. Outpatient rehabilitation is after discharge from acute care or post-acute rehabilitation facility, and a patient can attend for this if they are able to travel back and forth from a given center. Then we also have home-based rehabilitation and community-based rehabilitation, which is needed for extended length of time to consolidate the improvement that the patient will have made in the hyperacute, acute, and the post-acute stages of rehabilitation. And this has a rather larger outcome goals in having patients reassimilated back into their communities, reintegrated back into their families, and if possible, have returned to work. It is being reviewed, and the document that we have prepared so far is rather exhaustive, so we are reviewing it, shortening it, editing it, and once this is ready for a final look, we will take it to the task force, which I will talk about in a minute. And once the task force has put a stamp of approval on it, we'll send it to Presidium for further approvals and permission to disseminate. So what is our future task? We want to actually, as we know that in neurorehabilitation, several standards are common to the neurological conditions. So we will endeavor to develop minimal intervention needed to instill change for neurorehabilitation patients in general, and write standards for this. And then we will go on to do more condition-specific recommendations, for example, stroke, brain injury, or spinal cord injury. Then we will proceed to look at impairment and domain-specific standards and interventions. In order to do this, we will constitute a task force and will report on key domains by the end of this year. Who will form the task force? It'll be rehabilitation physician, stroke physician, physiotherapist, occupational therapist, speech and language therapist, nurse, and neuropsychologist. And as we speak, we are looking to constitute this to put the drafted document in front of them. So that is all I had to say at this point about where we're going with the minimal standards. Thank you very much. There is a lot to learn, a lot to discuss, and a lot to do in stroke rehabilitation. Thank you.
Okay, Thabit, thank you very much. It's an ongoing process, and we're just forming this task force, and we will eventually need a Delphi procedure and some other procedures to find proper solutions. But I think the idea of defining these minimal standards can bring us many steps forwards, even beyond the classical definition of guidelines. Okay, any questions from this? Good. If not the case, we go on. Our next speaker is Professor Namjong Paik from Seoul in Korea. He is the president-elect of the World Federation of Neurorehabilitation, and he's going to speak on neuromodulation in stroke rehabilitation. I think, Christian, we have a video from Namjong.
Hello, my name is Namjong Baek. I'm president-elect of the WFNR and professor at the Seoul National University and Seoul National University Bundang Hospital. My talk today is neuromodulation in stroke rehabilitation. By the International Neuromodulation Society, neuromodulation can be defined as the alteration of nerve activity through targeted delivery of stimulus such as electrical stimulation or chemical agent to specific neurological sites in the body. This modality can help restore function through neuroplasticity or relieve symptoms that have a neurological basis. In this lecture, I'll focus on non-invasive brain stimulation techniques. Non-invasive brain stimulation has been applied for stroke rehabilitation because this modality has spatial and temporal specificity, and it can be excitatory or inhibitory depending on stimulation parameters, and using their after effects, we can induce behavioral recovery and plastic change by inhibiting competing regions or facilitating local activity to promote changes during the relearning process. To current knowledge, it is unlikely that brain stimulation makes the brain form appropriate connections needed for recovery. Brain stimulation works by assisting the brain to form new connections and strengthening existing connections through a Hebbian plasticity. Recently published updated evidence-based guideline on the therapeutic use of repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation taken into account all RTMS publications, including data prior to 2014 as well as currently reviewed literatures until the end of 2018, showed that low-frequency RTMS of contralegional M1 for hand motor recovery in the post-acute stage of stroke was reached to level A evidence, whereas high-frequency RTMS of ipsilegional M1 for promoting motor recovery at the post-acute stage of stroke was included as level B evidence. We recently published the results of a study focusing on the impact of low-frequency RTMS on motor recovery in patients experiencing subacute stroke. Our study was a randomized, sham-controlled, double-blind, parallel group investigation aimed at determining whether applying low-frequency RTMS over the unaffected motor cortex in combination with task-oriented upper limb rehabilitation therapy yielded greater motor recovery compared to solely receiving upper limb rehabilitative therapy. A total of 77 patients were enrolled. 40 were assigned to receive real RTMS and 37 to receive sham RTMS in a randomized one-to-one allocation. Our inclusion criteria involved the patients capable of performing hand motion ranging from basic mass grasp without finger extension to lateral or palmar prehension with voluntary finger extension across various ranges of motion. The results revealed improvement solely within the subgroup of patients without cortical involvement. Recently published Cochrane reviews analyzed 27 studies with 781 participants examining the effects of TDCS versus sham TDCS or any other passive intervention for improving motor function and ADL. They concluded that there is evidence of very low to moderate quality on the effectiveness of TDCS versus control for improving ADL outcomes after stroke. As you see in this table, TDCS enhanced ADL function at the end of the intervention in terms of absolute values and change scores compared to sham TDCS. And their effect sizes in terms of standard deviations were 0.28 for absolute value and 0.48 for change scores. The quality of the evidence measured with grade score was moderate. Stimulating either hemisphere can theoretically improve swallowing because both hemispheres dually innervate the swallowing musculature. In recent years, the number of clinical trials investigating the effect of TDCS on post-stroke dysphagia has been increased. One recent meta-analysis, including 7 RCTs, demonstrated that they found a significant effect size only with anodal stimulation applied over the contraregional hemisphere. In 2018, Friedrichsen and his colleagues published a randomized clinical trial result of the TDCS effect on treating aphasia after stroke. The study enrolled 74 patients with long-term aphasia more than 6 months due to left hemisphere stroke. Patients received outpatient speech therapy for 3 weeks, total of 15 sessions, 45 minutes each, combined with either anodal TDCS versus sham TDCS applied to the left temporal lobe. The adjusted mean change from pretreatment baseline in crack naming was 13.9 words for anodal TDCS and 8.2 words for sham TDCS, with the mean anodal TDCS difference of 5.7 words after matching baseline, age, type of aphasia, and aphasia severity. This result indicates a 70% increase in crack naming for anodal TDCS relative to sham. The effect was evident from 1 week post-treatment through 24 weeks post-treatment. In the Everest trial aimed at evaluating the effectiveness of electrical epidural motor cortex stimulation in enhancing upper limb motor function among ischemic stroke patients with moderate to moderately severe hemiparesis, the real epidural motor cortex stimulation administered over 6 weeks of rehab therapy did not exhibit a superior impact on upper limb motor recovery compared to sham stimulation among chronic ischemic stroke patients. However, a more positive treatment response emerged within a specific subgroup of patients who displayed the upper limb movements triggered by stimulation during motor threshold assessment conducted before each rehab session. This underscores the importance of precise patient selection for the targeted treatment. A group of the University of Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon University in the United States conducted cervical epidural stimulation to enhance arm motion in stroke patients. They presented findings from a groundbreaking study involving 2 participants, marking a pioneering effort in using electrical stimulation of cervical spinal circuit to aid in arm and hand motor control among individuals with chronic post-stroke hemiparesis. Wireless EMG activity from arm and hand muscles was measured while participants performed upper limb motor tasks. The delivery of electrical stimulation to the cervical spinal cord was executed using 2 8-contact leads implanted in the dorsolateral epidural space, targeting spinal roots from C3 to T1. Controlled simultaneous stimulation through specific contacts was managed using an external stimulator via percutaneous connections. Participants were implanted for a duration of 29 days to enhance excitation of arm and hand motor neurons. The study revealed that continuous stimulation through selected contacts notably improved strength, kinematics, and functional movement. Consequently, participants were able to perform movements that they previously couldn't accomplish without spinal cord stimulation. Furthermore, both participants retained some of this improvement even in the absence of stimulation, and no severe adverse events were reported. While acknowledging the preliminary nature of the evidence, this research provides promising insights. It suggests that spinal cord stimulation could serve as both an assistive and a restorative approach in the recovery of upper limb function following a stroke. This time, the Cleveland Clinic announced the result of a phase 1 trial involving cerebellar deep brain stimulation for chronic post-stroke motor rehabilitation. The dentate-thalamocortical pathway represents a robust and reciprocal loop connecting the cerebral cortex with opposite cerebellar hemisphere. In this open-label, non-randomized phase 1 trial, deep brain stimulation was applied to the cerebellar dentate nucleus in combination with renewed physical rehabilitation. The aim was to promote functional reorganization of the cortex on the same side as the stroke in 12 individuals experiencing persistent from 1 to 3 years, moderate to severe upper extremity impairments. Each participant underwent surgical implantation of DBS system with the lead placed on the dentate nucleus contralateral to the hemisphere affected by the stroke. Results revealed that participants experienced a median improvement of 7 points on the upper extremity Fugel-Meyer assessment score. Irrespective of the time since their stroke, individuals who enrolled with some remaining distal motor function showed improvement exceeding the minimum clinical important differences. They exhibited a median improvement of 15 points on the upper extremity Fugel-Meyer assessment score. These substantial functional gains directly correlated with cortical reorganization demonstrated by increased metabolic activity in the affected cortical areas. Soon, we need a patient-specific approach. First, we need to identify the probable responders and deliver the optimal stimulation site, for example, using neuroimaging study, and then deliver the optimal stimulation parameters using sound techniques depending on patient's brain plastic condition. Parameters showing better effect and duration and optimal patient and time selection and individualized localization depending on the pattern of reorganizations are needed. The learning process in brain-computer interface systems could potentially be accelerated through the use of non-invasive brain stimulation techniques. Integrating these techniques aims to optimize the effectiveness of BCI-based neurorehabilitation. Some forms of non-invasive brain stimulation, such as TDCS, can be utilized in telerehab. In this image, a combined system integrates virtual reality with TDCS. Individuals with brain injuries can initially use this system under clinical supervision in a hospital setting and later continue their rehab at home through a telemonitoring system. This concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Okay, we thank Nam Jong for this very nice review, also encompassing most recent data with promising results also for more invasive neuromodulatory techniques. Any questions? No, so we go on. Next speaker is Professor Wayne Feng. He is one of the leading persons in the neurovascular unit of the Duke University and regional vice president of the WFNR for North America, a good friend. And he's going to talk about imaging as a tool for precision medicine. Do we have a video? Hope we have. Yes.
Today is World Stroke Day. I'm here to talk about how we can predict the post-stroke motor potential and how we can have personalized and recovery after stroke. Here's my disclosures. The object is to review the methods of measuring initial injury to the corticospinal tract and their prediction to the motor outcome, and review the prediction weighted corticospinal tract lesion load. Also review the 70% proportion recovery rule today. When you have stroke, there is global deficits. There's also domain-specific deficits, such as motor impairment, language impairment, swallow, sensory deficits, cognitive decline, and sexual dysfunction. Each of those deficits relate to a specific domain associated with specific lesion in the brain. And motor impairment, the most common physical therapy after physical deficits after stroke. The talk today is mainly focused on motor impairment and a prediction of motor recovery. So why we need a better prediction recovery? There's critical needs. We need a better patient care communications. We need to tell the patient what are their predictions, and so they can better prepare. We also need to triage the patient to a proper rehab therapy, set up a goal, set up a type of treatment and duration so family can be better prepared. There's finance implication as well. Research, we need to understand post-stroke recovery process. Neurorestorative trial typically enroll patients the first couple of days, and after stroke, sometimes aim to improve the motor outcome in 90 days, but we don't really have a good prediction tools because we don't have a good understanding about the recovery and process. When we talk about motor impairment, we really have to dive into the anatomy. That's what the author says. And neurologic deficit has to relate a specific lesion. So typically there's a cortical spinal tract or the cortical bulbar tract or the perimeter tract. There's also extraperimeter tract, lumbosspinal, reticular, vestibular, and tectoral spinal tract. Probably they all involve in the motor impairment process. And the lumbosspinal tract really involves the flexor tone, and reticular spinal tract probably really involve the voluntary movement, and on the extensors, vestibular spinal tract probably also, and mainly just to the extensors in regulation of the posture and the balance. Okay. The cortical spinal tract, as we all know, and it innovates from the late 4 and from the motor cortex, and also has some innovation from premotor cortex, subpremotor cortex, even the sensory cortex. 80% of fiber, as we all cross over at the medulla level, the deposition, and the 10% on cross, and the other 10% travel in the anterior cortical spinal tract. It synapse in the ventral horn, and eventually go to, innervates to the muscles. Really just and control the movement with the torso, upper extremity, and the lower extremity. The injury of the cortical spinal tract is presumed to associate with the motor impairment because the cortical spinal tract controls the motor movement. So how we can assess the injury to the cortical spinal tract? We can do clinical assessment, we can do neurophysiology tool, use TMS, or we can do the imaging, both structural and function, or we can just combine all the approach together. Clinical assessment is probably the easiest way. Everybody can do it. Every place doesn't require the complex equipment. We find an active range of motion with the middle finger and the shoulder at 1 month predict. On this, we build a quarter and a safe shoulder abduction finger extension at day 2, and the patient have 98% have achieved hand dexterity at 6 months. But if it goes on to 7 days, and if a patient doesn't have it, they have 25% chance of getting better. But if they don't have a safe, and they at say 7, and such a chance actually decreases 14%. It's pretty good tool. The only thing is, if patient cannot move, and we still cannot have a good predictions. So what about if patient cannot move, can we actually stimulate the motor cortex and evoke the evoker potential? That's where we use it, and then transcranial magnet stimulation pair pulse. It has a good sensitivity. Even the patient doesn't have a movement, but you can evoke, if you can induce a motor evoker potential, the patient still have a good recovery. The only thing is, in the acute phase, sometimes it's not easy to do TMS. It's not ready to use bedside, although we have now portable TMS. And at this moment, for severe patients, it's very difficult for them to sit down, and for 15 minutes we do the test. And although you can do the bedside, but it's not so easy. Even you transport the TMS, but there's a lot of noise in the patient room because the hospital equipment was just basically all the devices, and there's a lot of source of noise. So people say, what about just functional MRI scan? Well, that is a good thought, But patient have to demonstrate some ability of move, so we can do, in a text-based, test-related bold signal. But it's a little harder to implement if in acute phase. Particular patient will have a neglect, aphasia, or they just have a hemiplegia. It's not always they can squeeze things, they can move. But then people say, well, how about we just do the resting day? Or people say, well, can we just not do the functional MRI? Let's just do structural MRI scan. It's not an issue that subacute chronic phase, but it still remains an issue in the acute phase because it's all imaging is the volunar degeneration. But the volunar degeneration takes a couple of days to amplify and to be detected by the DTI. So there's all a bunch of literature really show in the predictability of using DTI in acute and chronic phase, but they have a challenge in the first couple of days. Cassius Deer came out of a way called a PrEP. It's also commonly phrased called PrEP 1. First, you use a shoulder abduction finger extension. If they are greater than 8 out and 10, those patients all typically have a complete recovery, pretty much back to normal. If it's less than 8, you do TMS, you can evoke motor evoke potential, shows the cortical spinal tract is preserved, and typically those patients have a notable recovery. But if you don't induce MEP, and you can do MR of the brain, and then you look at the FA around the cortical spinal tract, and you look at the affected side, unaffected side, look at the asymmetry index. If the asymmetry index is less than a certain number, probably show the tract is damaged but not too bad, and those patients still have some limit to improvement. But if the tract damage into the disproportionately and the asymmetry index large enough to cross the threshold, those patients typically no improvement, they become just spastic, hemiplegic, and in 3 months. So if I look at all the summary, all the methods, they all have a pros, they have a cons, and they are the R-square for prediction. It's not a grade. It's about a 0.3 to 0.5, and then stroke patient they are with motor impairment. It's not easy, to moving around, and you have to scan them. You have to do TMS. It really incurs a lot of extra efforts, cost to the patient. Is there any way you don't have to do extras? You actually can predict. That's really a good question. So in the last 10 years, my labs really focused on, can we find easy ways or low-cost imaging biomarkers? We think we're almost there. This is the patient, you can see, all have a MRI of the brain, and most of the patients now have an MRI of the brain during the acute phase, unless you have a contraindication to show if you have a stroke, how big it is. If you really go in your anatomy, you kind of know where exact anatomic effect, but if you're not, but we really cannot provide some quantitative measure to the cortical spinal tract. So we image in a group of patients on the top, you can see constructed the cortical spinal tract. This is actually my cortical spinal tract. Then you do this, coronal view and axial view and coronal views and sagittal views, and those are probabilistic CST. And then you overlay on those MRI scan, voxel by voxel, slide by slides, and you calculate what is the probability of each voxel and their chance to overlap on a cortical spinal tract according to this this library, and then you sum them all together. So here you can see the blue part is a stroke lesion, and the red part is a cortical spinal tract, but the part of the purple is actually the lesion overlap on cortical spinal tract. Then we also realize the cortical spinal tract is not uniform. It's actually narrowing down. So a small lesion in the subcortical area actually can have profound effect. then we realized we had to add a way to magnify some of the lesion in the subcortical area. With this, we're able to actually to show you as 3 patients. The patient 1, as you can, all those imaging actually flip over to the left side. This patient actually left M1 occlusion, larger infarct, and there's a larger infarct actually overlap on the cortical spinal tract. We use the NIH scale to measure global deficits and Fugl upper extremity to measure the motor impairment with their hand. And this patient, you see, NIH score is 18, only improved to 11. And this patient was 8, but no improvement at 8. 149 cc, but significant portion, 9.1 cc is the overlap on cortical spinal tract. The second patient was really just to have a distal M1, strategically spare some of the lesion on the subcortical area. Still very large lesion, 143, 81 cc, but the part overlap on cortical spinal tract significantly reduced compared to patient A. This patient, it actually shows 13, but it was down to 1. Also, Fugl is 11, pretty spare impaired. The total score is 66. Okay, has some reflux, a little bit of movement, but actually jumped all to 65 at the 3 month. Patient C is a subcortical stroke. Overall lesion small, but actually the lesion volume overlap on cortical spinal tract is pretty big because strategically the lesion actually injured the cortical spinal tract along the corona radiata area. So still 8, but improved 12, and NIH goes 18 actually down to 6. Really kind of show you size doesn't matter. What matters is really overlap, the lesion overlap of cortical spinal tract. So then the question is, can you really, predict is any threshold? And we test this idea, use 2 cohorts. Cohort 1 is in Boston bacterial deaconess, and then cohort 2 is in South Carolina. And you can see the ethnicity distribution different. The days on the therapy is also very different between the 2 groups. They're almost a 10 days difference. Okay. Otherwise, the rest was no much different. And you can tell if you use a clinical assessment in the beginning, Fugl at an acute, they can also predict it, at a 3 month. But the issue is, for those very severe patients, as you can see, picture B, they cluster together and they can't differentiate. But once you use the lesion load, and you can see, and those dots really kind of spread out, all right? So, that's really kind of show you the CST is better than Fugl, particularly with those very severe impairment. So here really kind of show you those patient behaviorally or clinically, they all looks very similar. Fugl is all at 8 points, but at 3 months, they differentiated from 8 points to 51. And then you look at the CST, you really kind of get a sense is if you have a large injury to the CST, and the less likely they will recover from the stroke. So then the question is, do you have a threshold? And then yes, we found a threshold. At a threshold of 5.5, in cohort 1, everybody had a poor outcome, which we define as Fugl less than 25. In cohort 2, there's really just 1 patient still overcome the odds. But once you move to 7 cc, neither group and nobody actually their Fugl is more than 25 points. Really kind of show you, at once the lesion threshold more than 7 cc, patients are almost impossible to have a meaningful and a recovery. And if we measure by the Fugl means nobody actually recovered more than 25 points on the Fugl. And typically we think those are very severe impaired. Our method is really kind of makes sense, but it actually requires a lot of pre-processing, manual work, and to draw the lesions. And is any way we actually can automation the process? We listen through the machine learning process, and use diffusion weighted imaging, Fourier imaging, matching them together, and co-register and automation of the process. It didn't really help the process, but we lose some accuracy. So we still need to kind of do more and collect more data and use AI, and hopefully the algorithm works better. So hopefully I can show you data in the future. So, and actually, this really kind of show you, imaging biomarker is at, we just have the development process, but next things we really need to validate it, then we can disseminate it. This is an actually found a big project called the Verify project in the US, $20 million project, really validated 2 imaging biomarker. One is neurofilament biomarker, basically use TMS and to induce evoke motor potential. But issue is it's a binary variable, yes or no. And the other one is neuroimaging, basically developed from a lab, but I cannot be the process just to be scientific rigorous. So hopefully the project finishes several years. We'll see if both are validated in the biomarkers to predict post-stroke recovery potential. You probably hear the 70% proportion recovery means some of the patients they can recover 70%, except those patients had a very severe impairment. Of course, that can make sense because those severe impairment, 7% means they recover more. Of course, that's not the case. And so they can show you the patient. If patient 26, and so basically they can recover is 66 minus 26. They have 40 points potential. Then times 0.7 is 28. So 26 plus 28 points, the patient have most likely recover to 54 according to 70% rule, but with some exceptions. And this paper really kind of show you the proportional recovery really actually applies to the patient who actually has a positive MEP. So once the corticospinal tract has preserved, they tend to recover and follow a certain pattern according to a 70% kind of rules. But as I said earlier, in Castanea using the PrEP1, but I have to use clinical assessment, neurophysiology to imaging. That's a lot for the patient, also for the team, right? So they actually switch to use a different algorithm, use a safe, use TMS, but skip the MRI scan, rather use the age to see if they actually can have a good recovery. They find it have a very similar pattern, similar algorithm. If the safe is greater than 5 to day 3, and if they're less than 80s, those have a good recoveries. If more than 80, and the safe score need to be a little bit beefed up, and if they're greater than 8, they still have. Less than 8, they have good outcome. So, and if safe is less than 5, and they just have to do TMS. If MEP is positive, and they have good recovery. If negative, and they look at the global and status, and actually less than 7, they probably still have some limited recovery. But if more than 7 means overall, patient probably have a very large lesion, they probably not in a good condition to recover. The patient have no recoveries. So anyway, those kind of summarize the recovery, how we can use, in a single method or algorithms to have a precision and a prediction to the post-recovery potential, so we can triage those patients who actually can have a better recoveries. For example, you can use TMS to triage a patient and to different recovery. With for example, a lot of brain stimulation, they respond to patients with positive MEP. Those negative MEP less likely to recover. Those kind of things we learned from the last 10 years. But I want to tell you, post-stroke recovery process is a very complex process. We just use the initial injury as a major determinant for the future recovery. But there are other things that can modify the process. For example, dose sometimes matter. BDNF sometimes may matter. We're still in the process to learn a little bit more. As we understand a little bit more of the process, we probably can do a better job in the future. Okay. Anyway, here's a summary of my talk today. Certain pattern stroke recovery exists after injury. Measure the integrity cortical spinal tract and use different way. Either neurophysiology or imaging can effectively predict post-stroke motor outcome. If the CST is damaged to critical threshold, so far we think it's 7 cc, but that probably need more study to better define the threshold, and the patient cannot have meaningful recovery with current rehab regimens. Proportional recovery exists some subset of population when CST is still preserved. Okay. All right, here's my lab, and my lab really focuses on neuromodulation stroke recoveries. And if you have any questions, and you can just write it to me, wayne.fang@duke.edu. And thanks for your attention and today.
Okay, Wayne, thank you very much. As usual, very brilliant presentation. This was primarily on prognostication of development of motor recovery after stroke. The entire business of precision medicine, of course, is also devoted to finding from biomarkers better ways to select treatments. But we are in a good way, I think, to come forward with that, with electrophysiological and imaging techniques. Any questions to Wayne? Don't see any. Okay, so we go on. Next speaker is Jorge Hernandez Franco from Mexico City. And Jorge is going to talk about what is new in botulinum treatment today. Jorge? He is with us as far as I can see.
Hi, Volker. I send my lecture on a video.
That's a good idea. So we ask Chris.
I hope they can show it.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay, here we are. Okay, great.
Hello everyone, I'm Jorge Hernandez Franco, and I'm going to talk to you about spasticity treatment with botulinum toxin in stroke patients. These are my disclosures. According to a census in 2020, 4.9% of the total population of Mexico has some type of disability, being stroke the fourth cause of death. Its incidence is 230 cases. In the absence of adequate prevention interventions, it is estimated that by 2030, increase to 44%. After a stroke, the patient develops positive and negative signs which characterize and spastic dystonia, and the negative symptoms consisted of impaired motor control as well as easy fatigability. I would like to underscore in the negative signs the inability to activate a specific pattern of muscles as a reduced selective motor control. Plasticity, one of the positive signs of the upper motor neuron syndrome, may be defined as a disordered sensory motor control resulting from an upper motor neuron lesion, presenting as intermittent or sustained involuntary activation of muscles. The prevalence of post-stroke spasticity reported ranges from 4% to 27% during the first 6 weeks after stroke. After a patient gets a stroke, he or she will start a rehabilitation process, and depending on the economic and social context in which the patient is in, he will have access to different treatments. Unfortunately, there's still some lack of knowledge in the use of botulinum toxin by some healthcare professionals. There's fear of extremely weakening the affected limb when using botulinum toxin, or it's probably just used for passive function goals. And unfortunately, there's also lack of rehabilitation protocols after injecting botulinum toxin in stroke patients. The cost may also be a limitation for its use. This lack of information limits the timely use of botulinum toxin. Healthcare professionals don't know how to use it. There's disinformation about adverse events, and both the patient and the healthcare professional get frustrated because the expected outcome is not achieved. And the lack of communication among health professionals limits goal setting. Spasticity may appear at an early stage after a stroke, in a range from 7 days to 3 months, as you can see in the graph. And it goes hand in hand with motor recovery during the first 6 months after the event. So we have a window of opportunity for the patient to recover functional movement. Therefore, an early diagnosis is of utmost importance. This may reduce the risk of secondary maladaptation, impairment, and decreased level of workplace and daily activity and social participation, and potentially aid in improving long-term outcomes for post-stroke patients. The presence of severe arm paresis and hemihypoesthesia during the first weeks after a stroke may help as predictors of an early spasticity development at an early stage. Treating spasticity may prevent the development of abnormal limb postures, as well as it may promote a functional recovery in the stroke patient. Moreover, botulinum toxin reduces spasticity sufficiently, allowing function to improve without causing a substantial decrease in strength, which may further impede function. And there's no need for trials to further confirm the lack of effects of botulinum toxin on arm-hand capacity. Botulinum toxin is a powerful tool that facilitates treatment strategies applied to stroke patients during the process of recovery in functional domains. Regardless of the approach, for example, when using virtual reality or using robotic devices or using neurodevelopmental techniques. As you can see in these two videos, botulinum toxin may show a positive effect in passive movement recovery in a short time. To the left, before botulinum toxin injection, and on the right, after the injection. Of course, it's important to provide with rehabilitation treatments after the botulinum toxin. Botulinum toxin may also be injected in different muscles of the same limb in order to improve mobility. For example, in this patient, muscles in the shoulder, in the elbow flexors, and in the finger flexors were injected. And that after a couple of days, you can see the improvement. It is important also to provide the patient with rehabilitation treatment with injection. And I would like to underscore the importance of providing stroke survivors and caregivers with knowledge of stroke-related complications, medication management and lifestyle changes, and empower them with self-management skills and proactive actions to manage risk factors and prevent adverse events. It is key for a successful treatment to enhance communication in order to improve patient-centered goal setting and goal achievement for the effective management of post-stroke spasticity. And these measures include involving family members, educating patients and family members, and establishing a common definition for the long-term goal. Finish my lecture, a couple of messages. We need to enhance implementation of spasticity multidisciplinary programs, improving communication between healthcare professionals. There's a need to promote rehabilitation team education regarding early spasticity detection in stroke patients, and there's a need to encourage training of botulinum toxin injectors. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm Jorge Hernandez.
Thank Jorge very much. He's with us as far as I know. Are there any questions to Jorge on this very nice talk on Botox treatment and pitfalls? Right? Not really. In any case, Jorge, thank you very, very much again.
Thank you.
Yeah. Good. So our final speaker for today is Professor Daphne Morijano. Changed the title, and now he's going to talk about the very important concept of biological reserve. Is Daphne with us directly, or the concept of brain reserve? So let's have a look at this.
I will just try briefly to fly upon the concept and to let you know at the end about the practicalities that we have done in order to have a progress in measuring this very volatile element. This is a very volatile because it has so many facets that we cannot even grasp the whole concept in I would say, in an easy way. Let's try to go on and do that, of course, very special regards from my university, for our Institute of Research, RONEURO, who is also a supporter of this meeting, not only intellectually but also financially. And I think we have briefly to acknowledge the roadmap of this talk, which is to conceptualize a little bit the brain reserve and then to see how can we eventually quantify. Of course, we need to operationalize this and then to ask the very legitimate question, can be this enhanced or recover to some extent? And the answer is definitely yes, to some extent, and depends on many factors, and particularly depends on our behavior and our emotional status. Then I don't think that we'll have too much time to go into the integration of this complex concept into research, but I will just touch upon, and we have to look at the new horizons and new development of the concept. Now, as a concept, we have to be very clear that the concept developed based on the very nice background, the background that solved many dilemmas in the last 20 years. For example, we are placing neurorehabilitation, brain recovery on solid basis, on basic research. So this is the first pillar, having everything as a reference on that direction. Then with the help of basic research, we have understood the post-lesional brain regulation, which is very complicated to be understood also today. Understanding post-lesional brain regulation, this would be the key element of future development. Of course, for practice, we need to be as much as possible related to evidence-based medicine, and at the end of the day, when we are using an intervention, whatever intervention we'll use, especially, for example, even a word can be an intervention. The way in which we address a patient, the way in which we approach something, this is an intervention already, but any intervention will be influenced by external factors and our endogenous factors.
And that is the key, because if you have an intervention addressing a medicine, a drug, any kind of that, this will not act in the vacuum, will act in the concrete context based on how much biological reserve we have. And this is another progress in understanding the complexity of brain recovery. Now, to put it directly, historically, we had two kind of approaches, the structural brain reserve and the functional brain reserve, that we usually call it also our cognitive reserve. And that it's important because at the end of the day, there is only one biological reserve, but these two are still able to be distinguished in a certain way. If we look back historically, the first important document, paper, was published in early 90s by Paul Zath, giving us the chance to, I would say, intuitively understand biological reserve and to see how we'll approach this from the structural perspective, put it in a blunt way. If you have more brain, you may have the luxury situation to lose some brain. Yeah, you may lose something, but if you are not so well equipped, then it will be a problem. So he developed so-called structural and temporal model of brain reserve. I will not insist on that, I presented before, but it's very simple. If you have a lot of brain, if you have enough and you have a good capacity and a good health, if something will happen to you, will not be clinically relevant at the moment. We know from our experience, and our strokeologist knows very well, that we have so many silent infarcts, yes, and cerebral infarct. And this is also an expression of how different parts of the brain may compensate a certain deficit. So going further and highlighting the idea of the hardware and the software of the brain, when we are talking about the hardware of the brain, we look into the structural capacity of the brain, and when we are talking about the software of the brain, we look usually, and especially now in the last decade, into the connectivity capacity of a certain brain. Then, of course, we have to look into our heritage, our genes, and how these genes will be, I would say, favorable, facilitated or not. This is up to our lifestyle and our behavior. Of course, this mechanistic, I would say, concept had some success, but currently we are contemplating in the very, I would say, contextual way. We had many gaps, I will not mention in all these elements, that haven't been considered in the past. Not only the way in which we are measuring, because now we have many biomarkers, we have developed the idea of biomarkers, we have understood the genetic and environmental factors, we have developed the science of epigenetics, which is unbelievable, and we see how environment and human behavior will change this situation. Then we have a huge variability based on cultural approach, populational approach, and of course economical status. And we are going to have less and less blurred concepts, less and less, and to conceptualize better biological reserve. And if we'll be to redefine this, I believe that it's important to mention that it's not only about the hardware and the software of the brain in the sense of the neurovascular units, circuitries, and large-scale networks, and the way in which we are creating connectivity, but it's also about the environment. And this is related to the lifelong dynamic interactive accumulating capacity to resist to physical, emotional, and social harms. So that would be, I would say, a reasonable definition. And this was published by our good friend, Professor Vladimir Hachinsky, some years ago, and we may consider as a very recent definition. We add in the last years to that an important fact that brain reserve, I said, it's not only a volatile concept, but it's also a volatile element, but still most robust one that will determine our recovery capacity. So we know that we have enhancement, a chance for enhancing brain reserve. We have factors that will act in a positive way on biological reserve, like good mood, the chances to socialize, as Nathan mentioned, to dance, to be happy, to stay with the friends, to experience positive things in life. This will really develop, and to learn particularly, to stay cognitively active. That will help a lot. Then we have negative elements, negative physical and psychological emotions, and of course stress will decrease the capacity of the brain to recover. And that is really an important part. Because if we look into the relation between the cognitive, so-called cognitive and brain reserve, actually the structural and the dynamic network of the brain, we'll see that there is an absolutely mutual influence. Whatever functional trouble we'll have will reflect into the structure, and if we'll have structural problems, we'll have an impact on the functionality of the brain. And the interplay between the software and hardware is huge, and we can talk a lot about this way and the patterns of disruptions. And I think in the future we need to define the patterns of disruption of brain reserve and the pattern of disruption of brain health. And I think this is a very important endeavor. But to operationalize is not easy, but we have to define indicators and variables that can be measured in order to quantify to some extent. I'll tell you, and I think we all agree that it's impossible to completely measure this. Because if you have a person with an excellent, I would say, collection of biomarkers and apparently healthy, if the person will get a certain, I would say, unexpected situation, and if the person will not be happy, if will be depressed, his resistance will melt down immediately. And if you have a creepy guy in a very difficult, he will say this way, this is gonna be the end soon. And if you will face something very good, very positive, then you will see a kind of rejuvenation. So this is very volatile, and we cannot understand, we are not able to understand all the substrates of this unbelievable, I would say, complex idea and I would say biological reality, let's call it. So if we'll be to define this important post-lesional brain regulation element, that is really important, because we are medical doctors and we are treating patients at the end, and we have to understand the brain lesion. And then we have to look into the brain capacity, how brain does after a lesion, how brain does after a stress. And today we know and we have understood, and maybe this is the most important achievement, is that after an immediate lesion, after an acute lesion, there is a robust reaction of the brain having two phases. The first phase is very short and I would say mild, which is the endogenous protection, and will not last more than 72 hours maybe. And then it's coming the second phase, the phase of recovery, which is lasting for weeks and sometimes months, depending on the brain reserve, of course. The key is that these two anti-correlated processes occur continuously, and in fact they are anti-correlated. When protection is up, recovery is down. When protection goes down, recovery goes up, because it's in the logic of the biology. For example, the glutamate is bad in the acute phase, but without glutamate we cannot recover anything on the long-term run. So the brain knows how to balance these bioendogenous programs. And I think this is a very important element, the anti-correlation in brain function, anti-correlation between apparently antagonic principles but which are extremely entangled. It's impossible to disentangle these processes, and whenever these processes will be disentangled, then we have a terrible disturbance and a disorder of the brain. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Daphne, thank you very much. Are there questions to this very intriguing concept from the panel? Well, I think we come to the end of a very intriguing webinar today. We can have a general discussion. Is anyone willing or to raise another important aspect which we eventually have not covered this today?
Volker, I'm here.
Yeah, you're here. Okay.
Yes.
Any questions or comments? Abhishek?
I think we had a very brilliant and exhaustive webinar on the World Stroke Day, covering all the facets of rehab, from prevention to rehab. Exciting to be part of.
So at the end of this demanding day, I do not want to exaggerate on our brain reserve too much today. I think at the end, I think we had a very nice series of very intriguing lectures on this field of stroke, which really demonstrates all the academic, scientific, and also social activities going on in this field. We are approaching more and more, let's say, a more advanced level of thinking about that. And eventually, I hope that we will have more ease in dealing with this also in future. I think we have reached a good point, but we certainly not yet reached a final point on this. We're still on the tour and on the way to improve, but there are good chances to do that. Let me at the end thank all the organizing organizations, the speakers, and especially our brilliant team in Romania and India who are helping us to broadcast these activities. As I mentioned before, all of this will be available within the next days on YouTube and eventually also on Instagram to have a look at this again, or through the WFNR website, of course. So thank you all of you very, very much. It was a very interesting and intriguing day. And now we can have some time to relax.
Yes, one point, Volker, I'd like to say for everybody. Thank you, Volker, for putting together this great program. Thanks to your efforts and also the great interaction with WSO and the other organizations.
Yeah, I think that's very important.
I think it's important to mention that.
Thank you very much, Daphne. I think it's important that WFNR shows face in the world of stroke. And I think we have done this today, and I'm very happy about that. Thanks, all of you, very much. See you in not too distant future, of it. Thank you.